Good evening and welcome, commissioners, applicants, and interested parties to the September 19th, 2024 meeting of the Cohasset Conservation Commission. The meeting is now open. My name is Valerio Romano. I'm the chair of the commission and will be running tonight's meeting as we implement the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Chapter 260 of the Cohasset bylaws governing wetlands protection, and Chapter 263 of the bylaws governing stormwater management. The Conservation Commission meeting is in session and being held on Zoom. If you have any questions for the commission, please put them in the Q&A section of the Zoom app. Include your name and address, and please limit your discussion to 3 minutes when called upon. Present this evening on behalf of the commission is our Conservation Administrator, Angela Giso, and our Conservation Agent, Charlotte Pechtel. I'll now have a roll call of the commissioners. Please respond by repeating your name and saying present. Commissioner Tom Bell.
Tom Bell, present.
Commissioner Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Steve Magnell.
Steve Magnell, present.
Chris McIntyre.
Chris McIntyre, present.
And Valerio Romano, chair, present. Tonight, we have a quorum of 5 commissioners. Before proceeding to the public hearing, the following hearing is continued. The hearing on NOI 2130 for 37 Parker Avenue has been continued to October 3rd, 2024. Like tonight in October, the hearing will be via remote participation on Zoom. The public is invited to offer their input by emailing cpechtel@cohassetma.org, and details for access to the Zoom platform are available on Cohasset's website. Charlotte, I believe that's the only continued hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, and then just had one last minute continuance for certificate of compliance for NOI 2305 and stormwater permit 2304 for 49 Border Street. So that's been continued to October 3rd.
Okay, that's the Wariski matter. Okay, great. And then, so let's get on to our first public hearing, why don't we?
Mr. Chair, sorry, we have 2 sets of minutes. Do you want to do those now or last?
Yeah, sure, sorry about that. Let's see, we have minutes. Hold on one sec. Let's make sure I got them. We have minutes from 9/5 and 8/22.
Looks like 8/8 and 8/22. Yeah.
8/22.
And everyone was here on August 8th, and Chris, you were absent on 8/22.
Yeah. So does anybody have any issues with the minutes? If not, I'd take a motion to approve the minutes from August 8th, 2024.
Second that.
Further discussion? I don't think we need to do a roll call vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Same thing, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for August 22nd, 2024.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, looks like our minutes are approved. Thank you for that, Charlotte. My bad. On to our first public hearing. In accordance with MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and our Stormwater Bylaw, we'll now hear NOI 24-29 and Stormwater Permit 24-29. I'll make sure that's for those. I think that's what's on the agenda, but that sounds a little wrong to me. 1 second, sorry about that.
That's correct.
That is correct. Yep. Okay. Yeah, both 24-29 for an application from COH Lobster LLC to modify the 4-unit lot at 82 Border Street for redevelopment. This hearing is continued from September 5th, 2024. Charlotte, is the applicant team in attendance?
Yes. Hi guys, can you all introduce yourselves for the record and let me know if I'm missing anyone? I think I see the applicant in the audience, but I think they might want to stay there.
Ms. Pechtel, Chair Romano, good evening. This is Adam Brodsky. As you know, I'm an environmental and land use lawyer I'm here this evening with Deborah Keller and Caroline Reese, our professional engineers with Merrill. And at this point, that's all we need to be promoted for purposes of this hearing. Can I proceed?
Yes, please, thank you.
Yes, and sorry, just a quick correction. It's stormwater permit 2427 and NOI 2929, so apologies for the typo.
Thank you. As you know, I represent the applicant Co Lobster LLC, which owns the former Mill River Boatyard at 82 Border Street. Just by way of introduction, Tom Sullivan is the manager of the LLC, and Eamon O'Mara is our project manager. Deborah and Caroline are the project engineers. And with your permission, I'll just provide a brief overview and then hand over the presentation to Deb and Caroline to speak to the site plan, the wetland resource areas, and the performance standards. As you likely know, this is an existing historic boatyard with 4 existing buildings. The site is previously developed with large impervious areas. The property is located within various FEMA flood zones, including the AE elevation 11 flood zone, as well as the BE elevation 15 flood zone, and therefore within land subject to coastal storm flowage. While not necessarily relevant for your consideration, the buildings are non-compliant with respect to zoning, as well as the flood-resistant construction requirements of the state building code. As you'll hear from Deb and Caroline, there are numerous wetland resource areas associated with the property. As I mentioned, LSCSF, rocky intertidal shore, and buffer zone to an offsite bordering a vegetated wetland. The property is mapped as being located within the Gulf River riverfront area, but the majority of the site is actually subject to licensing under Chapter 91, the Public Waterfront Act, and is therefore exempt from the RFA riverfront area requirements under the State Wetlands Protection Act pursuant to 310 CMR 1058-6I. In response to both DEP as well as Ms. Pechtel's comments, we took a more careful look at that issue, and we conservatively mapped the limits of Chapter 91 jurisdiction on the site. It's complicated. There are multiple licenses, but for purposes of the hearing tonight, we're agreeing that approximately 4,000 square feet of the property is located outside of Chapter 91 jurisdiction, and therefore not have the benefit of that exemption. However, this area is previously developed as well as degraded, and as Deb and Caroline will explain in more detail, since we're not increasing those degraded areas and making overall improvements to the site, in particular by reducing impervious, the project meets the redevelopment standards under the State Wetlands Protection Act. Because we're doing work within land subject to coastal storm flowage, as well as the riverfront area, which under your Cohasset Wetlands bylaw are wetland resource areas in excess of 1,000 square feet, we do need a variance for this work. And you'll hear in more detail, we're changing the use to a small boutique hotel. There'll be a total of 8 rooms, which require 9 parking spaces, as well as a drive aisle. The existing large boat storage building, which you're likely familiar with, is going to be raised and reconstructed in a much smaller footprint further from the shoreline. That will bring that presently non-conforming structure into compliance, both under zoning as well as under the state building code for flood resiliency. That building will be elevated with a hotel room above and 3 parking spaces below. And what this allows us to do is to open up the property for public access. We're proposing a captain's walk that's 10 feet wide along the shoreline that presently doesn't exist, very similar to the new public access way associated with the condominium project on Elm Street. The existing, what we call the gatehouse building, which is the existing building right on the street along Border Street, is going to be renovated with a small addition. That's not going to result in a substantial improvement, which would require that structure to be reconstructed to comply with the state building code. But we are adding flood events to improve flood resiliency. The two remaining buildings are the large existing pile supported structures. One we call the main inn, the other we call the Eastwick Inn. There are decks associated with those buildings, and those buildings and decks are going to be elevated again on pilings. We're not moving them or changing the exterior dimensions. It's going to be elevated such that it will comply with the design flood elevation under the state building code for flood resiliency. And that's where we're going to locate the remaining hotel rooms. Additionally, because we know that this site floods, we're proposing to mitigate that flooding and to provide safer access and parking by constructing a small retaining wall, as Deb and Caroline will explain, essentially along the existing bulkhead. And we're going to be filling a portion of the property to raise the elevation of the land. Again, being done for flood resiliency and safe access. We're also proposing to remove the abandoned marine railway. We're going to be filling a portion of that railway pit and repairing the existing bulkhead. We provided a detailed construction methodology as to how we're going to do this based upon the real world example at the Atlantica right around the corner. And this methodology is what was used there to protect the wetland resource areas in connection with that project. And just by additional background, we do require special permits from the Zoning Board of Appeals. We were before them on September 10, that hearing has been continued, before them on September 10, and that hearing was continued October 1st. We also require site plan review with the planning board. We were before the planning board last night on September 18th, and that's been continued to October 23. And we will require either an amendment of our existing Chapter 91 licenses or a new Chapter 91 license for the project. Lastly, the planning board hired Weston and Sampson to peer review the project, including reviewing the project for conformance with the stormwater performance standards. We've received their comments. Deb and Caroline are in the process of preparing responses. They can speak briefly to compliance, but there were no major issues that arose as a result of review of stormwater. So that went on a little bit longer than I thought, but with your permission, I'll turn it over to Deb and Caroline. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That would be great. Thank you, Mr. Brodsky.
And thank you. My name is Deb Keller with Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors. Here with me is Caroline Reese.
Good evening.
I'll start off by saying thank you, Adam. I can check a lot of things off my narrative now. So if possible, could I share my screen and I can show everybody, orientate people on the site? Good to hit that.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Hopefully you can see the plan, our cover sheet. So yes.
Yeah, Tom,
Yes.
can you see
Yeah.
that okay? I know sometimes it seems like if there's any way to zoom in a little bit, but I can see it.
Sure.
Yep. I'll zoom in a little bit more as long as everybody can see that screen. Most
Definitely
important.
better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So most importantly on this is our cover page, but I wanted to show it just to give perspective as to where the site is located. As Adam mentioned, the Gulf River does, the mouth does enter into Cohasset Cove, just at the property's easterly boundary, as well as having frontage on Border Street along the southerly boundary, and to the north and west is Cohasset Cove Harbor. So just showing general vicinity where the site is located, which I'm sure everyone is aware. As Adam mentioned as well, we have quite a few wetland resources on the site. And to just summarize again, as Adam mentioned, First, the site is located within land subject to coastal storm flowage. This is the most important line here, which pretty much bisects the site. We have a FEMA zone VE with an elevation of 15 to the north, and a zone AE with an elevation of 11 to the southern side of the site. As mentioned, Chapter 91 limit of the Chapter 91 was determined, and that is this dashed line here coming around, and then it kind of has this fun amoeba shape here just under the deck in one of the existing structures. This is upland and everything outside of those areas. So the orange here is Chapter 91. What is highlighted in pink is identified as an area. Now I'm a water dependent use zone. Sorry, within the Chapter 91 zone. So as stated, we did approximate the mouth from the mapping for the Gulf River here. So following that limit, we offset riverfront areas. This purple line here is your 100-foot limit, and the 200-foot is well off to the southerly side of Border Street. With that as well, we have the limit. It's a mean high water is our limit of intertidal shores, which follows along the bulkhead retaining wall, comes into where the marine rail enters or lands on site, comes around and follows the retaining wall again underneath one of the existing structures and around to, I guess we can call it the southeast side. We also have mean high water and intertidal following along this somewhat upland ledge area underneath the existing deck and fourth building located in the southerly portion of the property. With that, we're showing this is the 50-foot setback from both the intertidal shores as well as this off-site salt marsh identified across the street of Border Street. So they tie in and kind of coincide together as well. Obviously, there's no 100 because we overcross there. And as mentioned before, the portion of the site that is outside of the Chapter 91 license would be this area here, frontage along Border Street that I'm showing sort of in this triangular shape, which is the approximately 4,000 square feet Adam had mentioned. Looking to see if there's anything else. I think though that defines the resources. So we tried to clean up the existing conditions. So it's a lot of information to look at all at once. So this kind of is sort of a cleaner version showing the resources that we're looking to address on the site. So moving along, as mentioned, we do have a detailed construction plan is included in that is an erosion control and demo plan. As mentioned, this is the boathouse that is to be raised and removed here. This is the gatehouse, which we're doing some minor restoration to. And these two structures here that are on piles and the associated deck that sort of surrounds the two structures will be elevated approximately 3 feet. So we're going to a first floor elevation of elevation 12, as well as the deck. So we have, I think we can go in detail if needed be on the construction staging, but we're showing here sort of the minimum work needed, which is the stabilized construction entrance erosion control around the upland area and pavement area. And I believe the write-up from the contractor goes into further detail as to more erosion control if needed while they're raising the buildings over the water. And this also highlights, I think this is the easiest plan to see it in. This is the area of fill near the marine rails. So we are staying above mean high water, so we are not encroaching into, areas within the water area. So that would be our, when we were talking about adding a retaining wall, this is where we would be putting it so that we could fill this area. Okay, I'm gonna move. So I'm gonna zoom in just a tad more here. Site plan. So I think the biggest change really is the boathouse goes, currently goes all the way up to the abutment here and follows this line. So we are raising that structure and proposing a smaller structure farther away from the water resource or intertidal mean high water resources. Staying within the impervious surface, existing impervious surface areas of the site. So gatehouse here, minor repairs on the outside, but no major structural changes. Two main inn and the Eastwick Inn and the decks will all be raised. Access to the site will still continue to be off Border Street. We have sort of a horseshoe driveway. We have surface parking here, and then additional surface parking, which will be at grade garage with the unit above in the new building. With that being said, the goal here was to make sure that we enhance the site. Currently, the site is basically 100% impervious. We're now proposing what you see in green as landscaping. There's also additional planters on this portion of the deck, but obviously they're planters, not actually planted area. So we didn't account for those as well. But with this landscaping area and this portion of the Captain's Walk, which will be open deck over land, so it would be impervious areas that are now the pavement will be pulled up, or building will be pulled up, and now we'll have open land underneath the deck area for this portion of the Captain's Walk. It crosses over, it'll cantilever over, so no piers, no new structures needed for the access to continue across the marine rail area. Entering in to a landing, either you can enter up into the main inn or over to the open deck, or continue along the Captain's Walk back onto Border Street. With that being said, those are with the reduction in impervious associated with the Captain's Walk and landscaping. We're reducing the impervious overall on the site by over 2,100 square feet. Additionally, we were looking at it from a conservative approach, but this hatched area here is proposed cobble paving, which looking further into the landscaping plans, the goal is to have this all be pervious as well, which would be in an additional 1,500 square feet. So it is a large reduction in impervious from existing to proposed. Then to show you a little bit of what we are doing, as mentioned, we are proposing a retaining wall here so that we can fill this portion of the marine rail and raise these two, tie in surface grades into the two buildings and deck that are being elevated. With that, we're still have to meet Border Street. So we are only raising the site itself up to approximately 9.3 as the high, 9.4 is the high point in the site, where I believe it's on average about elevation 7. So it's about 2.5 feet of fill. This would be the deepest area right here where the marine rail is. And obviously we'd be tapering back to Border Street and then tying into the existing structures. The new structural will be at grade at 9.3. The gatehouse remains the same with a slab of 9.2 as existing conditions. And then quickly just showing you utilities. All the buildings will have new utilities subsurface. And the goal of the project would be to put the electrical underground at the frontage as well, so that all services would be underground. And I can hop briefly to the landscaping plans that were submitted with our resubmission. And I'll zoom in just a little bit closer, maybe not that close. So what's nice about the deck, I didn't mention this too, is that they're looking to have sort of an open view area on it so that we can enjoy the water below and watch that flow, as I'm sure it's can be quite amazing. And here you can see the Captain's Walk again. This darker gray here is some seating area that is put in to enhance the Captain's Walk along the harbor side, and then back into the Captain's 5-foot walk as you continue back down to Border Street again. As you see here, you can see the planters that the landscape architect was intending for the deck, and so those would be movable structures, so they can reconfigure those areas as needed. Accessible ramp up to the main entrance. We have landscaping surrounding the ramp and 2 larger landscape areas with the pervious cobble pavers around the new building. This one, so let me scroll so you can see this. So Kara has grasses and ground cover, a swamp white oak, some Rosa Virginia, and beach plum in the main large area for landscaping. Similar again in this larger area, and consistent with the grasses and a Rosa Virginia in the sort of the walkway ramp landscaping areas. I believe if I can zoom up here, you can see what is being included. See if I can make that a little bit bigger. So again, swamp white oak, beach plum, Virginia rose, and several grasses and ground covers. And I believe that's probably the one you want to see the most. She has identified lighting. So everything is down lighting, pedestrian lighting, no tall street lights, just to try to provide lighting for accessibility, pedestrian accessibility through the site. And those were details. I think I've covered pretty much everything, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Can you think of anything else? No? Thank you. Okay, put us to pretty picture. This one.
So before we move on to Commissioner Charlotte, I know that you had prepared some comments, and there was some back and forth and some responses from the applicant. Before I move on to petitioners or commissioners' thoughts and questions, is there anything outstanding that you want to bring to our attention first?
Yeah, so just a couple of things from my round of comments. So we do have, as of yesterday, I believe, we did receive comments from Division of Marine Fisheries. They're, just a quick summary. They're not recommending a time of year restriction because the work is, utilizing the existing piles that are below the deck. So that was a clarification that I had as well addressed in the comments, that for the existing piers and pilings, they're not replacing any of those. So there will not be impacts to land underwater for that. So that's why DMF did not recommend a time of year restriction. They did recommend for construction activity near the intertidal zone to be limited to work in low tide and the dry conditions for the removal of that railway. And then they had some other recommendations on staging and obviously doing the work all from the upland and not from the water, given the sensitivity with, the Gulf River and fish passage and habitat. The wetlands that were flagged, the salt marsh across the street, we're just waiting on the wetland delineation report from ECR on that. The harbor master did mention to me that she did want to review this. Depending on her comments, I'm not sure if they would be more suitable either for conservation or for one of the other board reviews. So if they are related to conservation, I will obtain those. And then there were some updates to the plans regarding erosion and sedimentation control. Some of that might be contingent upon the pending peer review revisions in regards to stormwater management and the compliance with the stormwater standards. So we would, probably want to see those site plan edits, on the plans. I'm sure there'll be some, discussion and conditions about that maybe once we have more of a final version. And Deb, do we need an EPA general construction permit here with a stormwater prevention pollution plan, or are we outside of those restrictions? I'm sorry, those thresholds.
Yeah, we should be outside those thresholds, but
Okay.
I'm going to confirm that with the contractor.
Okay, yeah, because one of the things that we were waiting on was also look to confirm location of any site dewatering and what the plan for that was. So that would need to be on the site plans as well. Not sure if Weston and Sampson will have comments for that, but that was something that we were just waiting on. And then just so the commission's aware too, based on the, on Adam's previous summary about redevelopment in the riverfront, a lot of that was added to the project narrative in terms of compliance with the redevelopment standards. And other than that, I think there were just a few more comments about the construction methodology, which was updated and was given to us for this project. And I think in terms of pending stuff, I think that's it. So definitely waiting on the results from the planning board peer review for stormwater, a wetlands report, some more information about erosion control and dewatering, and then, the recent recommendations that were provided to us by DMF, is something for the commission to consider. And then any comments from the harbor master related to the commission's jurisdiction.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. And so for the commissioners, this is clearly something of an early meeting where we're obviously going to hear more about this project, and we're going to get some additional information. So with that in mind, Commissioner Bell, what questions or comments do we have for the applicant?
I guess the first thing that I'm wondering about is the elevations here. You're in the AE zone where the flood elevation is 11 feet, I believe.
Yes.
And the highest elevation in your sort of the horseshoe or courtyard or whatever it is that you're doing here for parking is at 944. Why wouldn't you anticipate that, first of all, that AE zone would be elevated maybe in the near future? And would that cause problems for you? I'm not sure that that's within our jurisdiction. I'm sure Mr. Brodsky will correct me if it's not. But just as a matter of curiosity, I would think that it would make sense to try to at least get to that AE elevation early rather than have to retrofit this thing at some later date.
So I can answer hopefully a little bit, and if I'm wrong, Adam can definitely correct me. But the structures will all be elevated, specifically the two larger, the Eastwick Inn and the main inn, as well as the deck, will be elevated to elevation 12 above the VE zone. The new building has a slab of 93, but that it's parking below, and we'll have flood vents so that it is flood compliant. The residential portion of this is on the second floor, so it'll be well above the floodplain elevation here. And as I mentioned, this is the line between the VE and the VE is north, AE is to the south. So this is our elevation 11, this is elevation 15. So this does still comply with being above that elevation 15 per building code and flood zone. The gatehouse, as mentioned before, is the improvements do not require us to raise the structure, but we are providing flood vents so that this would be follow flood protection. Apologize. The site itself does not need to be raised to that elevation. And I would say that we're raising it as high as we can without compromising the site with respect to tying back into Border Street. So, but we are very cognizant of all of the structures and the living space within it and making sure that we're meeting building code and flood compliance for the structures themselves. And raising the structure, the remaining portion of the site, which is the parking and surrounding the buildings, as high as possible without, exacerbating any issues and having any slope or traffic issues into Border Street.
And Mr. Bell, it's Adam Brodsky. I just want to clarify, the Main Inn and the Eastwick Inn are located within the AE flood zone.
So,
The base flood elevation is 11. Current building code requires the base flood elevation plus 1 foot to the lowest floor. So these are all designed to comply with the current building code requirements. This is a discussion we can have regarding future floodplain conditions, but I just want you to understand that this was designed to meet with current standards.
And the so-called new building is also compliant? It's in the VE zone, right?
That's correct. And actually, I believe it exceeds the current requirements, which the
It does.
lowest structural member would have to be 2 feet above the base flood elevation. I think we have more than enough freeboard, and it provides some additional. So I think it's located the design flood elevation, I believe, is located 3 feet above the base flood elevation. I'll stand corrected on
So
that.
that would be 18 feet, is that correct?
yes. Yes.
Okay. One of the things that seems to have been left out here, even though it was shown on the last plan, was the with some sort of pier or dock or
Yeah. So, Mr. Bell, we're going to apologize. We're not proposing a pier or dock as part of this project. That will be permitted separately. There actually was a pier permitted at the site years ago. Those permits expired. The residual concept is still on some of the landscaping plans. So, but at present, we're not seeking authorization for a pier or dock.
So okay, well, I know what the question I'd like to ask would be outside of our jurisdiction, so I will not ask it. We'll leave that to zoning and planning. So beyond that, I don't really have any other questions or comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Berrigan?
Yes, I was wondering if maybe the commission would be interested in having a peer review, getting a peer review to check the compliance with WPA, because there are so many or several resources areas on this particular site. Would that be something we might consider to make sure everything's okay? I'm asking my colleagues, but
Yeah, I mean,
that is my
Commissioner Berrigan,
consideration. Yes.
From my perspective, yes, I've I always encourage, if it's the will of the rest of the commission, particularly when we're just talking about compliance, with resource areas, and I'm all for it. I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks. Maybe, do you want to move on to any other questions or comments you have, and then we can bring that one up, with the rest of the commission, and we can sort of talk to the applicant too, as to whether now is the appropriate time. Because this certainly isn't the only hearing we're going to have on this with them. We're going to get further stormwater comments back via planning board request for peer review, my understanding. Are there other questions or comments? Then we'll get to that one.
No, I don't have any other questions or comments, but just that for us to think about.
Can
Thank
I,
you.
can I comment on that?
Yeah, of course, Commissioner
I
Bell,
think,
please.
I think for the applicant, it would serve all of us better to be able to present a far less complex plan here. There's a lot of stuff that we don't care about. It's outside our jurisdiction, doesn't matter to us, but it would be nice to see sort of an expansion of what you've done right here on this, is to identify those areas that have the most restrictive aspects, so we can talk about each of those individually. This is a good start, I think. A lot of the material has been removed, and perhaps this might be sufficient. But I'm just always looking at these plans. The first one it looked like a plate of spaghetti to anybody that's not used to looking at one of these construction diagrams. And I think that it does not serve an applicant well to have lots of stuff on their plans that are not in our jurisdiction. So it's just a reminder to applicants that make it simple, make life easier for us.
And Chair Romano, at the appropriate time, I'd like to speak to that issue, the peer review, please.
Sure. Maybe if it's all right, Mr. Brodsky, we'll just run through the rest of the commissioners, and then maybe you could come back in and talk to us a little bit about it. To Mr. Bell's comment there, for me, Tom has got a lot of experience, and if anyone is ever talking about spaghetti, then it certainly looks like a 4-course carbonara meal to me. So to the extent that if we wanted to have a simplified version, maybe just a short summary or cheat sheet for the commissioners, like which specific regulations are implicated, just given the various resource areas that exist in this project. It's just not simple 100 foot from wetlands like a lot of them are, just riverfront. This is probably the most complex one I've seen in my time, as far as the different areas to be thoughtful of. And so maybe just a little cheat sheet for us, as to why, what the considerations are for each one. It might be useful considering you're coming back. We're going to be back at least once, if not more. So anyway, that would be my thought. And then yep.
So sorry, Mr. Chair, just to clarify. So are you guys, because there's multiple plan pages here. So would you guys want to see a simplified page just isolating the resource areas and the proposed work in each of those areas, and maybe like a table or something to kind of clarify the proposed alterations in each of them that are shown for existing and proposed?
That's what I meant by a cheat sheet. I think a table is a better word. Yes. Thank you.
I think that would be helpful.
Yes, very helpful.
Commissioner Magnell?
I really don't have anything to add. I had the same question as Tom did there about the complexity of the diagrams. So following some of the dotted lines and stuff was very, very difficult, but and you'd have to spend a lot of time doing it. So if there's any way I don't know if there's any way at least in the presentations, to be able to expose and hide the various layers of these things, but it would certainly make it easier in explaining them.
And I think that's largely the consensus. I appreciate that, and I think that's going to be some of the homework for the applicant. Commissioner McIntyre.
Yeah. I concur with the simplification or just, there's a lot going on here. You get wetlands on both sides of Border Street that are, it's hard to make sense of, and then you flip through pages and it really just gets more complicated. But one question I have is with the existing deck, I see the columns or the
Filings.
pilings.
Pilings.
Says existing deck to be raised to elevation 12. Are these pilings, is it yet to be determined whether or not those need to be replaced, or it seems like some of them are sitting on ledge.
Ledge.
Any information on that?
My understanding with the discussions with the architect, they have reviewed them and confirmed that the pilings underneath the deck as well as the two structures, the existing component is going to remain, and they are just extending them up the 2 or 3 feet as we elevate the structure and the deck.
From my experience, pilings require a margin of safety of 100%. Have these been certified by a geotechnical engineer or a structural engineer?
I will have to check that. I'll take that question back to the architect to confirm.
And it looks like the load here is going to increase. I could be wrong, but you're
No.
adding on your building form. And so if the load is increased, then
No.
you need to have a load analysis, and then look at those pilings and make sure that they do meet at least the state requirements. Sorry, you're
Hi, Ms. Keller, you're
you're
muted.
So this is Adam Brodsky. I don't know whether Deb or Caroline wish to speak to that issue. That's a building code issue. That's not a conservation commission issue. So
Sure.
we will need to, as part of our building permit application, make sure that we provide
Okay.
evidence sufficient to demonstrate that we meet all the requirements of the state building code with respect to load. That will also be reviewed by DEP in connection with the Chapter 91 process, because there are engineering standards for improvements to structures under Chapter 91. So it's a valid concern. I'm not sure it's a concern of this commission.
Or will be if they need to be replaced.
So
Yes,
just
that's correct.
Just a quick added, I just got a note from message saying that, yes, they have been reviewed by a structural engineer. So that review process has happened during the design process that we've had. So.
I mean, I would second sort of, the concern, and if if for some, if for some reason something, they were to fail, then we would be seriously harming the habitat, and that is under our jurisdiction. And then if they need to be replaced, or then again, like Commissioner McIntyre said, that's also something that falls within our purview. So if and I appreciate that comment, Deb. And so if that's the answer, that's great. But if there's anything else that might give the commission a sense of comfort on that, whether there's actually a report or something, and Adam, maybe that's already going to, through other municipal and state departments, but maybe if you wanted to forward us a copy of that as we get closer to, closing this in the future, I think that probably, help the commission along the way. Commissioner McIntyre, did you have anything else? And remember, this is going to come back before us again, so I don't think this isn't our only chance to ask questions and consider it.
Thank you. No, not this time.
So, I mean, I just had a couple thoughts. Obviously, we're going to wait for peer review comments, the planning board request. But when we talked about increasing the pervious surface, it's a little different than when you're decreasing impervious or increasing pervious surface when it's going into soil or something that filters, runoff before it gets to a waterway. here the pervious surface is dumping the water directly into the waterway, right? So, you know, so there's no filtering mechanism through sand or soil that will happen to protect. So I don't know exactly, you know, how that works, but the blanket statement, we're decreasing impervious surface, I don't know if that is has the same effect as it would if it was increasing pervious surface into something that would actually filter whatever water was going through it, runoff from Border Street or other. And is that something that has been thought of, Ms. Keller or Meryl?
Yes, so just for clarification, underneath
Help me understand. Sorry.
Apologize. Underneath the captain's walk would now be pervious surface, so the runoff coming across here would be allowed to infiltrate.
Deb, so sorry to interrupt
Can you
Could
reshare
just
again?
Your screen again with the plans.
Oh,
Thank
I
you.
apologize. I'm drawing along on that. Hold on one second. Where's my mouse? There it is. Okay, I apologize. So I'm showing you the site plan at the moment. I think this would be helpful. So underneath the captain's walk will be pervious. So as water flows towards the harbor, it will have the opportunity to be absorbed through the decking down, as well as the cobble will also allow for absorption into the ground prior to runoff, as well as all of the landscaping areas. And we've pitched the sidewalks so that they can drain to the extent practical into the landscape areas or the cobble areas. Again, this portion of the captain's walk. Obviously, this portion would be impervious.
Okay.
It's Adam. Can I interrupt and just make an obvious comment that this is land? That's soil beneath.
That side is.
Yeah, right.
But the east side or the Eastwick side, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
is
this
not,
area.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is all pretty much over water. The upland area is this black dashed line, kind of funky shape. So in this, it primarily encompasses ledge.
Not included in the pervious.
Right. And you have water flowing that comes and flows in a channel underneath the main inn and to the east of the deck and Eastwick building.
And so this deck it wasn't, so the only, when we talked about increase in pervious surface or decrease in impervious, you were really just talking about the captain's walk over the land. Okay.
Yes, yes.
That helps me understand. I'm sorry. Okay, that's great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
No.
And then, so Charlotte, was one of the comments back from a state agency that there'll be no work from the waterway? Or
Pull up the DMF letter. I think they had, so yeah, they wanted to do the removal of the marine railway be limited to low tide. All work is conducted in the dry, which means from the land and also not in any wet conditions. They wanted staging of construction, material and equipment in the intertidal zone to be avoided. So obviously no storing of anything like that in the resource areas past that limit of work. They wanted intertidal zone to be conducted from the upland portion. So obviously, from the landward side, not in the water. And then they did agree with the planned use of erosion and debris controls like the silt sock, safety debris netting under the structures and the pilings to catch any, kind of like similar to what we proposed for Atlantica into the marine resource areas. They also recommended that containment booms be deployed in a manner that avoids restricting fish passage to the Gulf River. And that that was something I actually forgot to mention, that the silt containment boom, we don't have the final location here on the plans. That could be either a condition, to kind of determine on the site, or it could be evaluated now, whatever the commission feels is most appropriate. But yeah, they definitely wanted most of their comments are definitely about, not just about erosion control, obviously, but about the removal of the marine railways and doing that from the landward side, not from the water, and doing it during low tide conditions.
we obviously cherish our stripers here and they run in and out of there. So, want to be careful of that. But one of the things I noticed was in the construction methodology, there was a discussion of floating work docks for the general contractor to use. Does that mean that work is going to be taking place from docks that are floating in the water, or is work going to take place just from the land side?
Chair Romano, we can provide you with more information. The general contractor is in the audience. The intention here is to do this project from the land side, but there are going to be instances where I believe workmen are going to have to access the outer edges of this. This is what we're proposing to do is very similar to what was done and what is being done around the corner at 46 Border Street. And this plan was developed. It took some time, and Ms. Pechtel could probably speak to that. Took some time to come up with an acceptable plan that was acceptable to the commission, acceptable to the harbor master, as well as all the other regulators. And we're duplicating that very same approach here because one, it's been approved by everyone, two, and it has apparently worked without incident. So that's what we're trying to duplicate at this site.
Great. Yeah, and I wasn't questioning that. I just don't want the commission to be in the position of approving or considering construction methodology which conflicts with, some other approval that was given, that's the only reason I bring it up. It makes sense to me that there may be a dock that somebody would have to stand on when they're, clearing something, but it just seemed conflicting, from reading both and then from hearing what Charlotte was saying. So that's the reason I brought it up. And I'm sure if the construction manager, the contractor wants to speak to it, or we can bring it up later on, that future hearing too, if it's necessary. I just thought I would mention it because I saw possible conflict there. But yeah, it seems to have worked well down the street, so I have no reason to think it won't work well here. Those are the extent of my questions now. Does anyone else on the commission have anything else for this phase of the hearing?
So since you brought up this issue, I would disagree that this is completely analogous to what's happening at the old Atlantica site. You have essentially a tidal falls here, a reversing falls here, and so any kind of a silt barrier there would be very hard to maintain. So work that might have to take place on the main deck and perhaps the Eastwick building and maybe even the main building are going to have fairly serious conditions of flow underneath them while it's happening. So that the analogy can only be extended so far. And some of the things that you may be referring to are the nets to catch things from falling in the water. And obviously that seems to have been worked out quite well over at the other site, but it remains to be seen how this is going to work out here. So like I say, that analogy can only go so far because it's pretty still water over there. Tide comes in, tide goes out, but it's fairly still water. This is far from being still water when the tide's moving, which is most of the time.
And I don't know, I don't recall reading that in the material so far, whether that specific issue was addressed with sort of it's really a whitewater sort of situation there when the tide's moving. I mean, it really rips, and and so I don't know if that's something that's been addressed, but maybe to Commissioner Bell's point, if that wants to be discussed or the mitigation elements that are going to address that in a different way than they were at Atlantica. Maybe at a future hearing that could be brought up and discuss that with the commission also, because Tom brings up a really good point. It isn't just tide going up and down. The water rips through there when tide's going in and out.
Chair Romano, we just received the DMF comments. I'm taking notes of all of your comments. We're happy to come back with more information. The point of the measures that we're proposing is actually keeps construction debris out of the water, so it's not subject to tidal flow. That's what all these measures are intended to do. And that was the point I was trying to make, that has worked successfully. I can't speak intelligently about location of booms in the water and the effect of booms on, and the effect of the tidal river on the booms. But again, we're happy to have a conversation. You know, this is not going to be without challenges. And I'm imagining that this is going to have to be adjusted in the field during the course of construction with changing conditions, which I think is what happened at Atlantica. I think we had plan A, and then we realized it wasn't going to work. There were subsequent iterations of that. I don't know what version we ended up with, whether it was B, C, D, or E. It was something about a living thing. I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, but we're prepared to work with the commission and the community to provide assurances, because we don't want any debris in the water.
Or any dead
Thank you, Adam.
diapers.
Thank you, Adam. Just clarifying briefly, it was definitely an evolving process over at Atlantica. The original safety netting design, for example, was not able to physically be secured to some of the outward facing structures. So we had to modify the netting design, and then the dock, little floating docks within the silt boom were also a secondary measure to prevent debris. You know, if anything got through, it would stay within the safety, you know, the silt containment boom, but it would also be on the floating docks too. That could be easily pulled over with, like, you know, rope to remove any debris. So at least, you know, we did have to modify that during construction. That may or may not be something we need to do here, but definitely something to discuss further, maybe at another hearing with more information. Maybe it might be best to visit the site, which I'm happy to do with the contractor, and maybe look at it initially, but I'm sure it'll probably change throughout to construction too.
Well, I mean, I don't know if, obviously we're gonna continue it. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to hear. If anybody, given the fact that this is, you know, there's a lot going on here, I think typically we wait for, you know, input from the public until towards the end, which would be, you know, a hearing or two from now. But if anybody is here on this from the public that, you know, wanted to, you know, give their input and anything for us all to think about as we come back and refine our plans and for the next time, I think now might be an appropriate time. Charlotte, do you see anybody raising their hand or wishing to speak?
Not at the moment.
Great.
No questions yet in the.
And so before we continue it, assuming that, you know, there's no objection from the applicant to continue it, Charlotte, is there anything else that we should consider?
I think just going back to Kathy's question, and then obviously we'll get updated site plans and responses regarding DMF's comments and the peer review comments from Weston and Sampson in regards to stormwater standards compliance. So that's definitely, you know, some stuff that we are waiting on. And then some of the stuff about the wetlands reports and updating the erosion controls, and maybe potentially putting any silt containment boom location on the plans, or leaving it as something to be decided in the field.
So, Mr. Brodsky, I know you wanted to speak about the, you know, further peer review beyond the stormwater requested by planning.
Thank you. And I'd rather be accused of providing too much information to the commission than not providing enough. But with that said, we will provide you with a simplified drawing. It's the commission's prerogative to determine whether you want additional peer review. I'm just going to offer a different perspective, which is from a wetlands point of view, there's a lot going on, but it's a pretty simple project. We're not doing any work in land underwater. We're not doing any work in the intertidal zone other than to remove the portions of the marine railway. It's a floodplain case. And it's a previously developed site intended to improve flood resiliency. So it's not an issue where I think there's any question regarding the delineation of the wetland resource areas. We'll provide confirmation. And by the way, I misspoke. I mentioned a BVW offsite, and I was corrected as a salt marsh offsite, but we'll provide you. But you know, we're buffer zone to an offsite, somewhat upland salt marsh, and we're not going anywhere near there. That's across the road if I have my map plan correct. So basically we're doing work within the floodplain. And so I think from a wetlands perspective, it's a lot more simple. You know, the riverfront issue complicated it, which is why we provided you with information regarding Chapter 91 jurisdiction, because we wanted to demonstrate that, in fact, we are entitled to an exemption, but we're acknowledging that a portion of the site is within riverfront area, and we have addressed all of those performance standards. So it's not like we're dealing with work within a vegetated buffer zone. You're worried about potential impact to the vegetated wetland. So that's a gross oversimplification. There's a lot going on. I don't want to undermine that. If ultimately the commission thinks it's appropriate to have a peer review, obviously we're obligated to do that. We have, and the client has invested in a very expensive peer review with the planning board. You know, if there's an additional scope that could be added to perhaps Weston and Sampson to take a look at that, that might help us save some money. But again, you know, from my view, this is all about the floodplain and what we can do to improve climate resiliency and flood protection. But that's my oversimplification.
Charlotte and Mr. Brodsky, I mean, on that, do you think it would be I mean, is that within their purview and their expertise, just to give an analysis of you know, the compliance with setback provisions, both in the bylaw and under state law, with the existing engineer, and just sort of tack that on into their scope of work, as opposed to just re-engaging somebody else entirely? And that's one option that I was going to ask Commissioner Berrigan, given that the applicant is going to come back to us with a table and some more simplified information in a way for us to analyze, you know, the setback issues and the resource area issues. Perhaps maybe at the next hearing, Commissioner Berrigan and the rest of the commission, if then we're not satisfied with that work and we still don't understand and feel like it, then maybe we could go and ask for further peer review. That would sort of be my inclination, if that's okay with you, Kathy.
Yes, that sounds great. That makes sense. I
Okay.
think that's a good plan.
So why don't we put a pin in that for the time being, and then we'll see what more information comes back, and maybe we'll all just, you know, have it really clear in our heads, and there won't be any further concern with that.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Charlotte, do you mind if we any objection to us taking a motion, continuing this to whatever date the applicant wishes?
Definitely depends on the applicant too. So I mean, our next hearing is October 3rd. Sorry, our next our meeting is October 3rd. Then I'm doing math in my brain. So that would be the 17th would be the next one, 2 weeks out from that. So I don't know if the applicant, I guess, Adam or Deb, would you feel comfortable with October 3rd or the following meeting on October 17th?
So I just want to point out that October 3rd is Erev Rosh Hashanah. I will not be available to Jewish holiday. I'm not critical to this process. I'm going to defer to Deb and Caroline as to whether they could be ready by the 3rd with the additional information.
Just being mindful with documents due a week before.
Understood.
I'm gonna ask if we can go to the 17th, and the reason for that is we have planning board, and I would like to be consistent with all the boards with all of the revisions. This way we can address Weston and Sampson, and we can have those into both the planning, which I believe is on the 23rd. Adam, is that correct?
That's correct.
So we have to submit a week in advance from them, and then if we do the 17th, we're condensing that so there won't be any missing information between the plan sets, if that's all right.
Works for me. Great. So
Yeah, well, so 10/17 and sounds good.
yeah,
Thank
thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thanks, guys.
See you then.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, so our next public hearing is for NOI 2332 and stormwater permit 2335. It's the dredging project at 175 Lambert's Lane, the Cohasset Golf Club. This hearing was continued from, I believe, August 8th, 2024. But I recall at the last presentation, there were some options before the commission. And I understand that we may have further explanation of those options tonight and, further presentation. Charlotte, is the applicant team in attendance?
Yes, sorry, give me 1 second, guys.
No, that's okay. Tell me if I'm moving too
I,
fast. I'm sorry. I'm sort of new at this, so I want to.
So, Sarah, I'm just looking for Dan. I don't see him, if he wants to raise his hand.
Yep, it's actually Ed Moyer.
Yep, so there's Ed,
Dan is delayed on a flight, unfortunately.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
Ed is joining us tonight,
Yep.
solo. I'm gonna hand over
Okay.
the hot seat to Ed tonight, so I'm pretty excited.
So I think this is everyone then.
Yes.
And, so sorry, can you guys just introduce your names and affiliations for the record?
Of course, yes. Thank you all. For the record, Sarah Stearns with Beals and Thomas, and with me tonight is the Cohasset Golf Club Superintendent Glenn Mashazek. And I'm very pleased to introduce you to Ed Moyer, who's here from Paragon Integrated Services. And just to kind of refresh everyone's memory, at our last discussion about the proposed dredge project at Cohasset Golf Club, we had taken the commission's earlier comments about looking at some different alternatives to mechanical dredging, sort of the traditional methodology of dewatering the pond and dredging in the dry, to some other options which could be less impactful in the immediate area. So the club took that request quite seriously, and Glenn did a lot of homework and connected with Ed and his colleagues at Paragon, and got some very interesting information about the system that they use. And Ed and his colleagues visited the club a couple of times, I think now, and reviewed the site and looked at some different options and put together a proposal for the club's consideration. We have since incorporated this option, hydraulic option, into our plans that have been resubmitted to the commission with some additional information from Paragon. And based on our last conversation and some interesting questions that the commission members had, we thought it made sense at this stage to bring Ed in and review the process as the people who actually do this, not just trying to permit it. So I will stop there and turn it over to Ed. And Ed, I have your video queued up and I can put up the plan, so you can just let me know what you'd like on the screen. I'm happy to do that for you if you would like.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Ed from Paragon. We do hydraulic dredging. Our process will, instead of having a floating dredge on the pond, we'll be using a hydraulic pump to pump the sediment debris, up to a separation area where we will have shale shakers, a clarifier tank, and a high-speed centrifuge for separating the solids, and returning clean fluid back to the pond. We have intentions of putting up turbidity curtains, so any disturbance that we may cause to the water, as far as raising the turbidity levels, we will have dual curtains in place to stop any of that material from going downstream at all. If the water rises to that level, to where that would potentially be a problem. So we use type 2 turbidity curtains that would stop any sediment and deflect it, and keep it in the immediate area. If you want to bring up the video there, I'd like to talk through the process a little bit, if we could, to kind of show you our safety measures and everything that we take for wildlife concerns and things of that nature.
Can everyone see that?
I can see
Yeah,
it. We're
so
not
this-
supposed to get sound, right? It's just it's just
Right. I'm just going to talk through it to help understand. We'll have the dredge out in the pond there. We'll be dredging with a 6-inch hose up to our separation area. That fluid initially goes through shale shaker machines that we run. This machine allows us to separate any large particles. You can stop there if you want, like for a minute. This allows us to separate any large particles from the slurry stream. We don't want this material going through any of our separation machines down the line. So this is a good area also if we happen to have any small wildlife or anything of that nature that would happen to not, stay out of the way of the dredge. This is an area where we can see that happen, and we're able to capture anything small that made it through the pump that can be returned back to its environment without harm. So that's we have guys here all the time monitoring this to make sure we don't have any mishaps like that. And then from this point here, if you want to keep going, the fluid then runs down into a tank, and then it gets pumped over to a clarifier tank over here on the right hand side. In this tank here, the debris is mixed with a food grade polymer, eco-friendly polymer. It's a non-anionic polymer that will not harm fish in any way. It grabs the small particles that we cause in the dredge operation, binds them together, makes them bigger, allows them to settle to the bottom of the tank, and overflow clean fluid off the top. We return this fluid back to the pond. The sediment that falls in the bottom of the clarifier tank is actually drawn into a high-speed centrifuge that you see here. Spins it at a high rate of speed. G-force separates the solids and the fluid. Solids goes down to a collection slide that'll go into a bin where we will use an excavator then for moving that to a repurposed site, stacking it, and the clean fluid comes out the other end of the centrifuge, and that is returned back to the pond. We return that back at the far end of the pond from any overflow areas. That way it gives plenty of time for any settling that is needed or disturbance that would potentially go downstream. And then again, we have the safety barrier of the turbidity curtains as well. That would stop any turbidity from going downstream. So that's kind of our process. We use hydraulic dredging. Normally, wildlife and fish aren't disturbed by it. They'll usually stay far away. Like I said, if we do happen to pull anything in, we can catch them at the shale shaker option to return them, which we've done many times. It's a good safety item to have on site. So yeah, that's kind of the process, and then mechanical separation, and the solids are able to be hauled away immediately or repurposed. Any questions at all on the process that I maybe didn't cover, or any concerns you may have?
I'm just going to put the plan up here too, just to refresh everyone's memory related to the location of the pond with the pumped material to be addressed in an upland area that's already open at the club property.
What's the percentage of water that remains in your final solids separation?
So we will separate down, usually down below paint filter if we happen to be going to a landfill or something like that. Usually out of the high-speed centrifuges, we're getting about 20% cake and 80% water.
So there's still water that's going to be left in your tailings then that you need.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah. And can you estimate how much water that would be if you know the volume of material you're going to move or remove? Can you give us a rough estimate of how much water is going to be? Well, you said you're going to carry it off the site. Is that right? You're not going to stockpile it at the disposal site?
This material is staying
No,
on site.
Yes.
Pardon, you were both.
Sorry, this material is staying on site for this project.
And so some of that water then is going to escape from your solids pile, your waste pile. And I'm just curious how much do you think it's going to be bleeding out of that?
You actually don't get much leachate from the material. I mean, it looks like moist dirt sitting there. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. So they'll
it'd be
usually have
80% water.
yeah, 80% water, which normal dirt has a lot of moisture in it as well. So it's just it don't leach much at all, actually.
So Commissioner Bell, just to continue on that, Mr. Moyer, so well, last time this was before us, there were a couple options for dredging, but now the team, the golf club team with you, this is sort of the proposal as to what the option is going to be now, right? It's not that the commission's still tasked with choosing one mechanical methodology or method of dredging this, but this is what's being proposed now specifically. Is that fair to say?
I think the club is interested in assessing the pros and cons of both. I think there are pros and cons to both. We've been permitted through the DEP Section 401 Water Quality Certification Program for the mechanical dredging version of this project, as well as have had a MEPA review where that was open to the public for comments, and we did receive some agency comments. But the mechanical dredging is certainly a permissible project through regulatory standards, but we're presenting both to the commission to understand if there's a preference on your part. I think the club is also evaluating financially, where do these line up? Can they accommodate either? And I think the answer right now is yes. Either is on the table, at least, in terms of financial comparability or compatibility. So I think just continuing the discussion with this commission to understand what your feedback is and trying to, answer your questions and, just assess any lingering concerns related, tonight with this particular alternative would be great for us to help us along the path to understand, which way we should really lean.
And I wasn't trying to get you to commit to something. I just was trying to understand, from the presentation, what the options were. And so when I go back to the project description from the July submission, has there been an updated submission since that one? I don't think so, right? The July 7th.
We haven't submitted anything since we last spoke in July, just because we wanted to be able to, delve in a bit more to this specific proposal so that you could understand from Paragon, more detail and understanding of what, their process is.
I really like the sort of simplified view or, description of how it works, kind of like the cartoon. It really did help me. But, to Commissioner Bell's point, the July submission talked about 11,000 cubic yards of sediment being removed, right? And so am I to understand that 80% of that 11,000 cubic yards is water?
No. I'm sorry, to Commissioner Bell's point, it's 80% of water is returned to the pond. Less than 20% stays in the soil, stays in at the dump area.
Thanks. I was thinking, how could 80% of that water stay on that side? It just didn't make sense.
It flows two ways. So the height of the pond won't change, shouldn't change.
Yeah.
What they suck out gets pumped back. So there's 20%, which to Ed's point it's just soil. I mean, I think if you did a water test on any soil, it would be 20%.
Yeah. So it seems to me that one of the merits of this hydraulic system is it's all going to be done through pipelines. You're not going to run trucks back and forth here to move the sediment up the hill. And then if you decide to move it off site, to move it back down the hill and cart it off. So it seems like that is a relatively low impact compared to the machinery necessary to move those solids by truck.
Correct. And we're handling what the commission requested last time about how we were going to drain the pond down. and downstream flooding, this has no impact to that. Will, multiple turbidity curtains will be installed. And Ed, what did Dan say it gets down to? 2 microns is the filter?
Yes, we'll get down under less than 5 micron with a
5.
high-speed centrifuge. Yes.
So pretty small.
But prior to going through the centrifuge, you're going to flocculate that clay with your polymer, is that correct?
Yeah, so just before the clarifier tank up on the hill is where the polymer gets injected. And then
so
the
that'll
polymer
take
stays in the solids, and you don't have any polymer carryover back to the pond.
So that takes those 2 micron clay particles and sub 2 micron clay particles. It aggregates them into something that is your centrifuge can then.
Yes, sir. Just raises the mass of it and allows the G-force to separate. Yes, sir.
Great. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Is there no carryover concentration of the polymer going back in the water? It all gets taken out?
Yes, as long as it's injected properly and everything, you have very, very little carryover, if any at all. As long as it's being injected properly, it stays trapped in the soil rather than in the water returning.
Is there a test or anything for that when it gets returned, whether any of the polymers in it?
You can do an NTU test to make sure, but yeah, it's very, very little residual. And if there is any residual, it is food grade polymer. It's 100% fish friendly. It does not cause any disturbance to the water or wildlife.
Or the habitat.
It's very commonly used in hydraulic dredging operations and wastewater treatment.
Does it eventually break down? Because assuming
it does. It is a polymer. It will break down over time.
Yeah, do you know what the half-life of that polymer is?
I do not off the top of my head. I have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, if you have the product.
Talking about
details-
days, weeks, or months, or years.
Months at the most.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely not years.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
If you
provide
haven't already the SDS sheet and
correct.
be great.
Yes, absolutely.
So we got that request from Commissioner McIntyre to get the safety sheets. Okay.
Got it.
So let's keep going. Tom, did you have any further questions or comments right now? We can go around the horn and see what comes up again.
No, I don't.
Commissioner Berrigan,
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Magnell, did you have anything else?
I do not. I'll certainly look at the SDS when it comes in.
Okay, Commissioner McIntyre, I know you asked for the SDS. Were there other thoughts or comments that you had right now?
No, other than just, at this view, this approach seems much more refined and calculated. So seems to be a really well thought out process. So rather than just scooping it all out.
Yeah, and then sort of to the golf club, I know, I wasn't trying to get you to lock one in right now. Obviously, it's premature for you guys to make the decision or for us to. Is the intent to come back for another hearing with this same simplified, explanation of the other approach?
Well, I think at the club, we have a fair amount of conversation to go over this. It's not an inexpensive project for us to take on, so we're going to weigh our options there. If any changes are made, we'll obviously come back to the commission, but right now we're looking strongly at this. As you said, it's a simplified process. I haven't personally seen this run. I've investigated it a lot, so I'm hoping to get out to a natural site and see this firsthand and see the operation. But it mitigates a lot of the commission's concerns from traditional dredge. It mitigates a lot of the concerns from our membership with closing of a hole, the disturbance of a hole, just how messy a dredge is. The only thing that we're going to see on the golf course is a boat in the middle of the pond, sucking the material up to our dump area as it is. So our impact is very low. But to say that we're 100% in on this, I don't think the club's there yet. I think we still have our work to do internally.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to get you to say, I just try to think about from the commission's perspective, sort of what the next steps are. Because, when this project first came to us, I'll tell you, my thought was to send it out for sort of a third-party peer review who doesn't have sort of the financial interests that you do in, protecting the aesthetic for your members and protecting your bottom line. But instead looks at it, from our bylaw, from the protection of the habitat, from our jurisdiction, the things that are sort of in our purview. And, and that's why I was trying to get an idea from you as to what further information you wanted to give us before you expected us to, take a vote, frankly, one way or the other. And so I was trying to get a sort of roadmap that out, because my thought really would be to, just, and because what I heard tonight sounds great, and I don't have, but I would like somebody who's sort of seen this, 100 times or whatever, if maybe that's too many, to say, hey, commissioners, these are the things you really want to think about. If you're really worried about habitat, then this is like, hands down the best approach. If instead you're really worried, and I don't know if they're in conflict or not, but if you're really worried about downstream water quality, this is the best approach, or this hybrid, or, really you're not thinking about this, what the polymer actually does, and so, and not that I'm distrustful at all, that what I heard tonight was really gave me a sense of comfort to understand it better. But that would be sort of, and depending on what more information you wanted to give us before you expected us to come up with an opinion on this, that would be my request to the commission, what the rest of them thought about. But I don't want to do that prematurely. I don't want to do that if you're saying, wait, hold on, commissioners, we still got this other stuff to tell you. Maybe this will help you come up with a decision. And so, yeah, I don't take the, asking for a peer review lightly, but, this is fairly large amount of square foot, a large amount of material. We're talking about scooping up a foot of the bottom of a wildlife habitat, and so, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
I mean, it is a man-made pond. Going back to a traditional dredge, this far succeeds anything that a traditional dredge can do. You put an excavator in and digging it out, it is a mess. There's no way around it. It's a huge disturbance. Turbidity curtains, you can do whatever you want with siltation, fences, and all that. To me, looking at the system, and Sarah and I kicked this around for a while, we looked at this hard because it's somewhat of a leap of faith for the club to do this. We know what a traditional dredge looks like. We know how that operates. We can plan for that. We can forecast that. We can work around that. We've never seen this process. It's a little bit of a leap of faith. It is, I have a hard time finding any flaws out there that would impact the environment in a way where we're being man-made, being channelized. There's 2 control structures leaving the pond where multiple turbidity curtains could be put. And then there's another control structure right before across the Cedar Street where turbidity curtains could be put. Everything's going up to a dump site, which has been tested. It's going to come out cleaner. We're, as Ed said, any species, any turtles, anything that gets sucked up in is going to be returned and carefully thought out. And honestly, I'm hard pressed to come up with another methodology that kind of hits all those points of benefiting the environment, hitting all the requirements of the Conservation Commission and all your regulations, and as well as hitting what the goals of the club is, and dredging the pond and improving our water source. So
I think you just convinced yourself, Glenn.
Right.
Well, it sounds like I wasn't trying to get you to pick one or lock yourself.
But honestly, that's the thought process on my mind. Like, what other dredging processes are there? I'm welcome to listen and
I
explore.
don't know.
And
That's why I wanted to sort of get an engineer that didn't really have a stake in the game to take a look at it. I'm not saying that we need to have the most complicated, thorough, months drawn out, break the bank for the golf club, analysis of this. But and it sounds like the other commissioners, probably understand a lot of this better than your humble chair does. But that being said, that would sort of be my approach. But it depends on what other information you expect to bring to us, and I also depends on I'm only one, and so if and so I kind of just because it seems like we're getting towards the end of the information that's going to be presented this evening, I thought I would bring that up now.
And
And
Mr.
so-
Chair, and to the commission through the chair, do you tonight feel that there's anything specific related to this process that you would like to see, besides the MSDS information, of course? But I think that and Ed, if you have anything else to share, certainly feel free. I think we did include some of the descriptions of the equipment that would be used in this process in the original notice of intent. So if there's anything else you can think of tonight, please ask it of us. I would also just like to say, this is a very well-educated and well-rounded commission. You have a lot of really smart people on this board, and you have a great agent with a lot of background, and she knows what she's doing. And I would, certainly within your purview to ask us for a peer review, but you have a lot of, great opinions and great knowledge right on this Zoom call to discuss amongst yourselves. So we're happy to provide whatever additional information you can think of or that we can think of between now and our next discussion. And Glenn will go back to the club and kind of relay what we've talked about tonight, I'm sure. So if there's anything specific that you can think of tonight where we may be able to fill a gap, that we can get working on that. Otherwise, I would suggest maybe continuing for a couple of meetings, just so we can talk behind the scenes, I guess, a little bit about which direction we'd like to focus in, and then regroup at that point.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick clarification question, and I guess another question to the commission about any additional materials regarding the testing?
I think all I need to see is the MSDS,
Okay, so nobody wanted to see like the data on like the half-life, or any of the testing that could be done in the water? If we wanted to, or if the commission wanted to see that, or would you guys just be satisfied with the material safety data sheets?
Well, it depends on what that says. If there will be information about its toxicity
Right.
on it, and if it sounds like it's not toxic, but we'll confirm that by looking at the data sheet, and if that's the case, then I don't think we need to worry too much about testing.
I guess the only other question I would have is one of comparing the effect on the wildlife in the pond, not including the geese, of course. Between the two dredging options, it would seem like the dredging, the kind of traditional dredging option, being that it has to lower the water table, would, and also dig things up kind of willy-nilly, would have more effect than this, even though you've got this essentially underwater excavator. Is there anything in the underwater excavation process that essentially shoos them away, or keeps them from being sucked in too easily? I mean, obviously fish and turtles, could swim out of the way, but if they see it coming, but they would be not there, I suspect, if you dewatered the pond completely.
Yeah, and so Commissioner McNeil, I mean, that's really largely my concern. Our jurisdiction is to protect the habitat and not to think about the specific turtle, although I sort of find them somewhat inseparable. And so, but yeah, that's largely my concern as well. And that was, and it looks like, and so if there's anything else that we can hear, but this solution obviously, just logically sounds like it's better for the wildlife habitat than the mechanical dredging of digging up the bottom directly. but I just don't, that's what, like, I don't know what I don't know, you know? on that,
Yeah,
where
and
I'm-
I would certainly concur. Ed, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to assure you guys on the head of the dredge, actually, one, the noise and movement usually shoos everything away. We don't see too much wildlife near it for one. And then also we do have a 1-inch screen, 1-inch square screen on the front of the dredge pump that that would deter anything from anything bigger than a 1-inch size of going through. And then also another thing regarding the turbidity concerns, if there are any, is one thing with the hydraulic dredging is any of the cloud that we make as we're disturbing the bottom and bringing up this silt, it's actually getting sucked into the pump. It's not just a plume out there that's, you know, going to turn the entire pond dirty, you know, while we're in there operating as, you know, just a normal dredging operation, what mechanical dredging operation would do. So this is a far less invasive way to go for dredging. We do many golf courses. We're doing Muirfield Country Club in Ohio here next month. I mean, it's just it's the best option. It's the hydraulic dredging.
Are there any
Sorry, Commissioner McIntyre, please.
are there any like ecological like studies on that, on your methodology that might kind of you might be able to provide us in addition to the SDS sheet that, you know, just would speak to that kind of how, you know, in a scientific way, like how less invasive it is or less disturbing it is to the resource?
Yeah, there are some good articles out there I can give links to the group here, and you know, give good reading material for you to take a look at. Yes, absolutely.
Great. And you said it's a screen in that little illustration looked more like a sweeper. So it's like a vacuum type thing. It's not a
Right, it's an auger on the front of the dredge that helps bring the sediment from the outer area into the face of the pump. And then on the very face of the pump, there's a 1-inch square screen
understood.
that's up,
Okay.
you know, deterring any large particles or wildlife from getting into. Yes.
There's an auger that's running through the floor of the pond, the bottom of the pond before the screen.
Say again, I'm sorry.
There's an auger that's sort of dredging it from the bottom of the pond before it gets to the screen.
Yes. Yeah, for the setup silt and everything, rather than using jetting agitation that causes a larger plume, we just use an auger that brings everything into the face of the pump. That way because our pump is basically 6 inches. So you don't want to take a 6-inch swath. I mean, so we're taking a 6-foot swath by bringing the auger into the pump. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm just one, and you know, it is I'm definitely getting more and more comfortable as the discussion goes on with the proposal. So if I guess maybe you know, just on the issue of peer review, I'm going to do a little chairman's prerogative here and kind of do a straw poll for the other commissioners and just see. And this is not a poll. This is not to reflect on the, you know, on the permit itself or the permits themselves or anything like that, just on whether we might want to have further requests for a peer review. I'm just going to ask directly at this point, Commissioner Bell, is that something you think would be, you know, warranted?
Well, ordinarily we would call for a peer review if we have some reason to think that something that the engineering here is flawed in some way. I don't recall that we've done it. I could be wrong, but I don't recall ever doing a peer review to examine the technology that's being employed. It's usually been
Also, we've done peer reviews as well on the compliance, like if there's concerns about compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act or our bylaw, either for stormwater or for wetlands. We've definitely asked those those applicable professionals to look at it.
Yeah, but for the technology that's being employed, I don't recall that we've ever needed a peer review for that.
Well, the reason I thought it was more, you know, more important before tonight was when we were being asked as the commission to choose between two methods of dredging, right? And so if I was being asked to pick one, I would say, well, I don't know, this one sounds better.
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate to ask us to choose which method to use. I think we're being presented with alternatives that the club is considering.
Right.
And they're looking for feedback about each of the methodologies, but we're certainly, I hope we're not being asked to choose because that's not our role.
That's why okay, great. I think that helps to sum up. Anything else, Tom?
No.
On that, Commissioner Berrigan, do you have any other thoughts on whether peer review is warranted?
I agree with Tom. I don't think it's warranted. I think what was presented makes sense, and that's good enough. I would like to see if there's any kind of toxicity that comes from the from that polymer, but at this point it would not stop me from passing this plan.
Commissioner Magnell?
I don't have any additional expectations. I certainly want to learn more about the technique. If that, just link to the papers on it and a little bit more detail on and certainly there is detail on the equipment in the documents provided, but more detail on the process.
Commissioner McIntyre?
I mean, I don't, at this point, I'm not sure what they would review. I don't hold out I don't say when they come back to us, I might not feel differently, but at this point, I want to learn more about the process, get some of that information that were requested, and that, I think we can take it from there at this point. But if, when they come back, if there's a change of a decision in terms of moving back towards I'm gonna have a lot more questions on the traditional method, I guess. I would say.
And then I guess to the golf club, it sounds like we're definitely coming back for at least one more discussion before, and it sounds like you want to go a few hearings out. Do you have a sense of what additional information you may be providing us for then? I guess so. We're going to get the SDS sheets. We're going to get some links or information about at least this hydraulic method of dredging before then too, so that the commissioners can kind of read up on it a little bit and sort of understand more and maybe see what other concerns there may be. Is there something else that we may be provided or other information we expect to have at the next hearing?
Very much.
I don't think so. I think we've given, I'm happy to provide the link to the video we just watched, and I can read the equipment sheets and the items we talked about tonight. And I think that's really it. I think, we've covered the process. And I think just in summary, since we're kind of at this crossroads at this point, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the key differences from a regulatory and compliance standpoint, because both projects have been designed to meet the performance standards of both the Wetlands Protection Act and the local wetlands bylaw and the local stormwater bylaw. And all of that material has been submitted and revised as discussed. So just to, competence-wise for the commission, both projects are technically permissible under both sets of regulations. So there's no need to worry that there's, circumventing any kind of regs or anything like that. That's our job. That's what we do. We say to our clients, we understand what your goal is. Let's try to make it comport with the applicable regulations so that we can file it with the issuing authorities. So I feel very confident that both types of dredging projects meet all of those criteria. Are there more than one way to go about that? Of course, but from our perspective, we feel very good about that. And as I said, DEP has already approved the mechanical dredging. Now, that doesn't mean, it's green light go, certainly, because there are other ways to approach this. And as we've talked about tonight, some with less impacts. The commission came to us at our first hearing and said, you know, you were concerned about the staging area and the buffer zone to the pond, the dewatering, and, you know, potential downstream flooding and sediment plumes, et cetera. And, you know, that's how we ended up here tonight, looking at other options that negated all of that. It's a very different type of process. And, you know, as was touched on tonight, it's a little bit shorter duration. There's probably more setup, but there's less trucking, it's less messy. You know, there's a lot of really good things that we talked about tonight with this project. To me, the lack of dewatering in this particular environment is probably the thing that really, you know, puts the hydraulic option well above the mechanical dewatering option, because it's a large pond, it's a lot of water going into a very narrow channel. Can it be done and managed appropriately? Of course, but is this a better option? I think perhaps. It's really just going to be up to the club to assess whether or not they can take on this project, timing wise, financially, all of those things that they need to decide. But since we're talking about it here with you, I think, you know, the club is going in that direction, it sounds like. So I think, you know, I just wanted to kind of highlight those items just to keep in mind the biggest differences between the two. And it sounds like we'll probably be back to talk a little bit more detail about some of the specifics that we went over tonight, and we'll go through Charlotte and send that supplemental information her way so she can distribute it to the board before our next discussion.
I really appreciate it, and I feel a lot. I'll tell you this project. I think about it a lot since the last hearing, and what I heard tonight was just really far more encouraging, and I really liked it a lot, and you know, especially simplifying it for me. And so I appreciate, you know, the steps. This is the direction this is going in. So thank you guys very much. Charlotte, anything else that we should be considering before you ask the applicant to pick a date?
So there's our October 3rd and obviously October 17th hearing. If you want the next hearing, it would be, I believe, let me just pull it up, November 7th. So yeah, October 3rd, October 17th, November 7th. Those are our next three. The next one is November 21st, but I know that's obviously very close to Thanksgiving. So
Right.
not gonna encourage people to continue to that one.
I mean, I think, Glenn, if you think you have enough time, if we continue to October 17th, that certainly gives us enough time to work with Ed on getting that additional information pulled together. Ed, does that work for you too?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. You did say October 17th?
Yeah. I think the
Um,
3rd is a little too close, but I don't think we
Yeah.
need to go too far into November. I think the things that we talked
Yeah.
about preparing tonight are not things that would take too long to pull
Okay.
together.
Yeah, and one of my questions too was, you know, definitely one of the best management practices that was recommended by DMF, and I believe a few other departments from the 401 was doing it in the summer, early fall. I don't really know what early fall means depending on who you ask. So would that still be feasible, I guess, if you were to continue to the 17th and potentially, you know, might even start work in October or November? Would that still be in a time frame where the water levels are still low and acceptable to do the work, and where you could do the work in a time before obviously everything starts to, you know, before water tables start to rise again, you get wetter conditions? Because that was definitely one of the best management practices recommended by DMF to obviously minimize turbidity and erosion concerns, even with those controls in place, just because you're working close to, you know, those areas.
To be honest, Charlotte, we're not in the club is not in a position at this point to pull the trigger this year.
Okay,
Year,
fair
so
enough.
it'll we'll hit the right timing.
Okay, perfect.
You know, to that point, when they come back, there was a lot of concerns. We use that pond for the irrigation and dewatering it, how we pump. We got to maintain a golf course.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. That's just good to know. I didn't know if you were
We
anxious
will-
to start
we will
this year.
notify.
Okay.
Well, with that, so October 17th, we'll see everybody again.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Thank you so much for your patience while we figure out, you know, the project as well. You know, appreciate you coming back and providing the information, particularly tonight.
Great.
Thank you. And thank you to Ed for joining us and giving us all the detail.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moyer.
Thank you.
Good night.
Your time.
Guys.
Thank you.
Okay, one moment, please. So I believe next we have hearing continued from September 5th for NOI 2424 and stormwater permit 2423. Applicant DL Realty Trust is seeking to construct a driveway at 31 Dolan Lane. So with that, I don't know what members from the applicant team are on. Charlotte?
I think it's just you.
Yep, thank you, everyone. Jeff Acid here with Morse Engineering. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So here on behalf of the property owner, and this property is 31 Dolan Lane. It's about 4.3 acres in size. It's currently a wooded property. The wetlands include an isolated vegetated wetland located here on the property, as well as a bordering vegetated wetland to the south side of the property here. So this project was approved by the commission in February of last year under an NOI and a stormwater permit. The difference is that we had the driveway going across the neighbor's property within a driveway easement went right across here. At the time, this neighbor at 25 Dolan Lane was on board. They had signed the NOI application as one of the property owners. It's been over a year now, and they haven't been able to get a formal agreement signed on that to actually grant an easement. So we're back in front of you with an alternative design. So the new filing has the access over the subject property without any easements. So it's a unique shaped property. It has 50 feet of frontage off of Dolan Lane, wrapping around like that, encompassing the 3.4 acres. So you can see the new driveway comes off of the driveway, and it does make this S turn that we were trying to avoid, but this will be, looks like it's going to be the only option. This location was actually recommended by the commission when we were doing the permitting before, and we actually prepared this plan as an alternative. So to get into the details of the design, it's within the buffer zone to an isolated vegetated wetland only, and IVWs are jurisdictional under the wetlands, not jurisdictional under the Mass DEP Wetlands Protection Act. They are, however, jurisdictional under the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw. And they have a 25-foot jurisdictional area, which is that green buffer. That's not a no disturb. It's like the 100-foot buffer to a BVW. So the way we've designed this is the driveway will pitch as you're going down the driveway approaching the house. The driveway will pitch to the left-hand side where there will be a grass swale on the shoulder, which
Jeff,
will.
can I interrupt just for 1 second? Do you think you could do click one zoom in, Jeff, just so I can see?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I initially wanted to show the whole site to kind of give you the overview, but yeah, let's zoom in now. So IVW, 25-foot buffer in green. The driveway is going to pitch to the left-hand side where we have a swale shown, and we have that detailed on the second sheet, and that feeds into a planted rain garden. And then on the right-hand side, there is a 4-foot tall boulder wall. So the layout of the house itself doesn't change at all. There will be all the erosion barriers in place. That bold dash line is the mulch stock. We have notes on the plan calling for all of the limits of work to be staked by a professional land surveyor. And we provided stormwater calculations updated to show that there still will be no increase in runoff to the 3 design points that we have. So with that, I will pass it back to you and I can answer questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Bell?
Jeff, on the previous.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Well, on the previous plan there, I don't remember if this was recommended or not. I think this was, we asked for alternatives to going through the resource on plan south, but I remember that there was significantly more trees that would need to be removed for this. That was one of the reasons why you didn't want to do that. There was a lot of ledge, and additionally, you're going right through the buffer, which is only the 25, but in my opinion, that's kind of like the 50 if it were a regular bordering vegetated wetlands. So is there a mitigation plan for the buffer zone that you're driving through here?
We're not proposing a mitigation plan per se. We are proposing a number of trees, 2.5 to 3 inch caliber native deciduous trees, as well as 6 to 8 foot coniferous trees here and here. And the rain garden will be planted with a number of shrubs as well. That's what we're proposing for plantings at this point. As far as tree removal, I haven't run the exact numbers on it. The limited disturbance is probably a little bit more, just being a little bit of a longer driveway it's not that much longer though, really. Instead of going from here to here, it's wrapping around. And there is some more ledge outcrop, some more ledge removal. With the other plan, there's a tall vertical face of ledge here that we had to go through. There's still ledge removal over here. I would anticipate ledge is visible throughout this area. So I'd anticipate encountering it about a foot down throughout this area. And we're lowering the grade about 2.5 feet. The reason we're doing that is just so that on this curve, it's not too steep. I wouldn't want to have too steep of a curve of a driveway going into a curve, and also want to limit the height of the wall through this area. So we're trying to find a balance on that, kind of the best fit. And that's where we are right now.
Commissioner McIntyre, did you have anything else? Go around the whole.
Just that I'm gonna want to know like a tree count, and I would expect some sort of, especially in the buffer zone, I can see at least 4 trees that are probably going to be impacted in the buffer zone. So want a typical breakdown for trees in the buffer zone, overall trees, and replacement, that sort of thing.
Sure, I can do that for you. Yeah, it looks like in the past we had located the individual trees back in this portion of the work, and then we had added the trees within the buffer zone here. But there would be some more in this area that we can have field located and added to the plan.
So wait a minute, where are you going to add these trees?
We aren't showing the existing trees in this area, in the portion that's outside of the wetland buffer. So I can get the survey crew out there and locate those.
Yeah, I mean, our primary concern is in the buffer zone itself. But I mean, we like to see them all, but, and you do have 4 trees there, 5 trees identified in the buffer zone that would be impacted here?
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Okay, so those obviously need to be replaced somewhere also within that buffer zone.
Okay.
I mean, our standard in the 50-foot buffer is 2 for 1, I believe. And I would agree with Commissioner McIntyre that this is sort of the equivalent. So it looks like we're talking about 10 trees.
Okay. So the only other areas that I could plant them in the buffer zone are going to be in wooded areas.
Yep.
Would you want them in the woods, or would you prefer to have them kind of like along the edge of the woods, along the limit of clearing?
Ordinarily, we would expect them to be in the buffer zone itself, but if there's
just
no room to put them, I would say that probably as close as possible to that buffer zone as possible.
Yeah, I'm just thinking they'll do a little bit better. They're not shaded.
Yeah.
So I'll put them right on the edge. Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, the southern exposure from this side, they'll get some sun in there. Okay. Okay, I'll figure it out.
Did we ever establish how this IVW drains?
It does not drain. It doesn't have an outlet.
Does it ever, there was an opportunity certainly this spring to know whether it ever has standing water in it.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Jeff, do you know the date of when Brad flagged this? I know it's been a while, but I don't know what time of year he went out. Usually it says it on the
February.
plans.
Yeah,
Oh, February.
2023.
Okay. Okay.
Commissioner Berrigan?
What?
I don't have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. My computer is acting up. It keeps turning off my video. If I get logged off, I'll log right back in.
Okay.
I'm not on Wi-Fi, so I don't know why it's doing this, but just to give you a heads up.
Commissioner McNell?
Is the two lines of coniferous trees that are just outside the driveway, towards the end of the driveway, were those intended to replace the ones in the buffer zone, or were they intended to replace trees elsewhere?
They are intended more as privacy screening to the neighbor.
I see. Okay.
So this is the only way in, essentially.
That's correct.
And even though we asked for an alternative to the other to the original plan, which would have an easement through the more southerly part of number 25. And the issue there was you would actually be in the wetland itself, in disturbing the resource. So this seemed like this alternative plus and the one that you initially proposed that we approved, which crossed about the middle of 25's property, seemed like the only alternatives.
Yeah, I think with the original plan, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were able to move the driveway outside of the 50-foot buffer, but it was just outside, like practically on the line. The original plan was definitely through the wetland and we pushed it out 50 feet. But it still obviously went through undisturbed buffer zone and ledge.
Yeah, so without getting into a situation of a limited project, this seemed to be really the only workable or one of the only workable solutions.
Mm-hmm. Jeff may or may not have cut out.
No, I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, you are?
agree.
Okay.
I agree with your analysis of that.
So is the other proposal for the driveway is now just off the table with the working with the neighbors is now no longer going to happen, and this is the only proposal in front of us?
Yeah, they've tried, it's in my client's best interest to have that straight shot of a driveway. He's really tried, and they haven't been successful with getting that easement. That being said, I've asked Charlotte spoken to her about this coming in with this as a new NOI and a new stormwater permit instead of amending the other one. And what I'd like to do is, if it's okay with you, is have a condition that one of the permits must be closed out prior to any work and prior to a pre-construction meeting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We could, issue some sort of, I think, an order of conditions that really just says that the project is no longer, eligible or appropriate, something.
Yeah, definitely. I have it, whenever we're ready, either, I do have a recommended condition for that, because this one would only be jurisdictional under our bylaw, whereas the original project going through the BVW buffer was jurisdictional under the act and the bylaw. But even though they're the same project, it's technically two different permits, but obviously we wouldn't want both permits open. We'd want the applicant to choose one, and we would issue, he would have to put in the request, but we would issue a COC. And one of the options for a COC is an invalid order of conditions.
Yes,
So
yeah.
Whichever one that is no longer valid, that is not an option, that would just have to be closed up first through a COC specifying that the order of conditions wasn't valid. Then you close that out, record it, and then you'd only have one for the site.
So it sounds like we're gonna have a bit more information provided to us, specifically, locations for the new trees. I don't know if the definitive analysis of the trees that are gonna come out exists here. It looks like we do have 5 counted that are within the buffer, but it looks like, sounded like, Jeff, you're gonna get some that are outside of that 25-foot to us also, and then maybe get us an indication as to where the 10 will be planted, per Commissioner Bell's recommendation of 2 to 1. And so I don't know, Charlotte or anybody else, any other commissioners, is there anything else that we want to hear from this project tonight before that comes back to us with that information, or any other information that we're going to ask for? Charlotte, I've read through your proposed conditions. They make sense, but I think it might be a little premature to go through those tonight unless.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do
so-
that tonight.
So is there anything else from the commissioners that we might want to ask for before Jeff picks a date to come back? Jeff, is there anything else that you think we should be considering, or you'd like to tell us before you pick a date and we move forward?
No, I think I'm ready to continue the hearing. If you have a meeting on October 3rd, that would be my request.
Can you get us the updated landscaping plan in a week?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Well, with that, thank you so much. And, we look forward to hearing more about it on October 3rd. And hopefully, I don't know if there's any, and then we can decide on exactly how to handle the 2 outstanding. It sounds like Charlotte has a plan for that, though, that fits.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, can I request a 5-minute recess?
I was just about to say that. Thank you, Commissioner Bell. Let's take 5, guys. It's 8:42. Why don't we come back at 8:47?
Right.
Yeah, everyone in the audience will be back at 8:47, but I'll be on.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Yeah. Valerio and Steve, are you guys good to go?
I'm back.
I am.
All right, sounds good.
Everyone else here? Oh, yeah, okay. Let me see where we are. So I believe the next matter is an enforcement order for alleged beach alteration at 100 Whitehead Road. Charlotte, how do you think we should proceed?
Sorry, give me 1 second. Just adding in Alex from our town council, and then Adam, are you here representing the property owner?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Adam Brodsky and I represent Kingsbourne Trust in connection with this matter.
Hi, Alex. So yeah, I can start. So I think to refresh the commission's memory, we had a show cause 2 years ago about some beach alteration with a beach hopper machine that was recently purchased for that purpose. We advised the property manager at the time that that was a regulated activity that was not allowed without a permit or permission from the Conservation Commission. I believe after closing the show cause hearing, unfortunately, even though I didn't receive any further communications, we did notice that there still was beach alteration going on. It's visible from aerial imagery, and there were reports from abutters that I received. So we definitely are concerned about the ongoing beach alteration activity with this machine. It was pushing rocks to either side of the beach to kind of clear the area for, you know, I think just recreation, for recreational purposes, but obviously, you know, that of course is a regulated activity under the Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaws. And then there were some additional reportings within that 2-year time frame of additional vegetation removal with the same machine, but it was on a different property at 35 Whitehead. And then most recently, the harbor master did bring some dock alteration concerns to my attention back in, I think it was July. And she noticed that the dock was modified. She had advised at the time to the property manager that he needed to go through the commission, but unfortunately that was not done. So that's what the enforcement order was issued for by the commission. Our town council also wrote a follow-up letter that was sent to the property owner, just emphasizing the enforcement order and the show cause, well, enforcement order hearing tonight. The enforcement order, we had decided to obviously issue a cease and desist on the alteration activities, as well as discuss any potential restoration during this hearing tonight. With that, I can turn it over to, I guess, both of you. And then if the commission obviously wants to go forward from there.
Chair Romano would be appropriate just to say a few words.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Brodsky.
Upon being engaged, I immediately reached out to Ms. Pechtel to let her know that I would be working on this matter, as well as reaching out to Attorney Whiteside. We're not contesting the enforcement order, and I see my job as bringing the client into compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act, as well as the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw. To that end, I've reached out to Brendan Sullivan at Merrill Engineering to solicit a proposal in order to obtain an existing conditions plan and to get the wetland resource areas delineated. I believe that Brad Holmes from ECR has previously been involved, and I've suggested that he be retained in order to delineate the wetland resource areas. So I've also spoken with the property owner as well as the property manager and told them that they're subject to a cease and desist order. And I don't anticipate any further work being done. At this point, I need to understand the wetland resource areas. And then I'm prepared to recommend that we come back to the Conservation Commission with more information. If it's appropriate to do some work on this beach, that would require a notice of intent. I do have some experience with beach management plans. I work with Ms. Pechtel in connection with the Sandy Beach Association's beach and beach management plan, so I have some passing familiarity with what the state and the Conservation Commission deems acceptable in this environment. With respect to the gangway and floats, I've also asked Merrill Engineering to please document existing conditions so then we can compare them to the approved gangway and float that was licensed in 2007. I need to understand whether what has been placed out there could be permitted or would need to be modified. And if it could be permitted, we would have to go forward and permit the change in that configuration and the increase in the size of the structure, which would require another notice of intent, as well as additional licensing, including an amendment of the existing Chapter 91 license. So I'm in the process of getting all of these pieces together, and I just wanted to assure the Conservation Commission that I'm actively working on this. So I have limited information, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and obviously I welcome any comments from Attorney Weissite.
Yeah, Attorney Weissel, would you like to, let us know what you think? I know that there's been some communication between you and Charlotte on this issue. It seems like it's sort of been ongoing, and the property owner does know that using this equipment out there isn't authorized, is a violation of the bylaw and state law, and it may continue. It keeps happening. So I'm not exactly sure the best way to proceed, but I think that's part of why you're here, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have spoken with Charlotte about this matter, as well as Attorney Brodsky, and I think the plan that Attorney Brodsky has laid out makes sense to me from a permitting perspective, and I'm happy that he's involved and that he has advised his client that they are subject to the cease and desist, so that there should be no activities until a permitting solution is reached. So it seems to me like the best next step would be to allow some time for council to work with the consultants that have been retained to determine the best path forward from a permitting perspective.
So it sounds like there's a couple issues. One is sort of a permitting perspective, should the property owner wish to continue this activity, but then there's also an issue with mitigation for unpermitted activities. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think mitigation could be part of the equation. I'm not sure, practically speaking, how that would work here, but I think it's something to be considered. Sure.
Yeah, and Chair Romano, I have no sense of what the conditions are out there. And given that this is a tidal and coastal beach, I imagine those conditions change rather rapidly. So again, I'm not taking any position or suggesting that something is appropriate or inappropriate. I just have to understand and get information from the professionals as to what's the present condition out there, and get their recommendations as to what we need to do.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, and then when you're talking to them, obviously, bring up the issue of, the plovers, which, are obviously frequent the beaches, particularly right around here. And those habitats are obviously protected. And if there's any way to get a sense of, whether those habitats were disturbed, it's one thing to look forward and say, okay, how do I do this permissibly in the future? But if there's something that we can fix from what was done in the past, I also obviously want to take that into consideration. That's certainly part of the mandate of the commission.
Yes, Chair Romano, I've not heard that this is priority habitat for an endangered species, but that would be part of what I need the wetlands professional to do, is to delineate the site.
Great, thank you, Attorney Brodsky. Commissioner Bell, do you have any thoughts, comments, questions?
No, I think Mr. Brodsky needs time to coordinate with his client and the contractors and get back to us.
Commissioner Berrigan,
I agree with what Tom Bell just said.
Commissioner Magnell,
I have the same opinion. I assume that since they have ceased, we can wait until they have a plan.
and then Commissioner McIntyre.
Yeah, I mean, until we have a delineation and, you know, we know what the resources are, we'll be able to kind of look back. I'm just cruising through near map, and based on Mass Mapper, I mean, the general delineations, it's not just a beach, it goes directly into coastal dune and then, and you know, and then further into another resource area. So it's like none of that activity, it would be permissible on any of that without a permit. And if that's the only purpose of that equipment, I suggest they can keep whatever they want, but we've already spoken to them about this, so I would say, you know, talk to legal counsel, but they just, if they just keep using it, they shouldn't have it.
Yeah, I think I agree exactly with that, Commissioner McIntyre. So yeah, I think with that, you know, Adam, you know, I appreciate you working with him and with us, sort of figuring out, you know, the delineation, maybe some sort of specifics as to, you know, what's happened, and what's been affected, and what their intent is in the future, and that includes the floats, and you know, just coming back to us with, you know, not just a plan for if they want to continue the work, what an NOI would look like, but also, you know, if there's any harm that's been caused, how we can mitigate that, whether right there, you know, or elsewhere.
I understand.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
yeah,
we
sure.
did get a comment, but they haven't provided their name and address.
Do you want to give a chance to?
Yeah, I
To
messaged them.
members of the audience or anyone interested, you know, just you know, anonymous comments, unfortunately, we can't really give them a lot of weight. So if anyone would like, you know, particularly if you're a Cohasset resident, although you don't absolutely have to be, but if you're a Cohasset resident or an abutter, just be nice to identify yourself further so we can, you know, give your comment, you know, the weight it deserves.
I think in a general sense, the restoration plan, whatever it may be, I would want the input from a wetland scientist on the best way to do that. So if that's where they're headed with their comment, which it seems to be, how to do that, I think whether or not leaving it alone and letting it return to its natural state is better than just or redistributing the rocks that were there naturally. I think input from a wetland scientist would be what I'd be looking for.
Yes, and Chair Romano, as I said, I've asked for that expertise to be brought onto the team for that specific reason.
And that goes to sort of the restoration or mitigation piece that, you know, as opposed to just the forward thinking NOI piece. But yeah, great.
No, I understood. I take detailed notes, so I try not to miss anything.
I'm sorry for repeating myself.
The commission's concern with respect to mitigation and restoration of conditions.
Great. So do you want, Charlotte, if it's okay, if it makes sense to you, should we pick a date for Attorney Brodsky to come back after he's had time to consult with the rest of the expertise and the property owner?
I think that depends on how we want this information. You know, whether we want some initial feedback now, or if we want to wait for any future permitting. Either way, I would recommend obviously keeping the enforcement order open and active until all these matters have been resolved one way or another, regardless of permitting. So I don't know, Adam, if you're more comfortable with a date, or if you want to just obviously, you know, we know you're working on it, so I don't know.
So if I might suggest, Chair Romano, at least a date for me to come back and provide you with an update so that I need to, I'm subject to the whim of the consultant's schedule. And as you well know, it's very difficult to get survey quickly, as well as delineations. But if you provide me with a date by which I need to check in, that assists me in trying to get that work done more quickly than not. And even if I don't have anything substantive, at least I can keep you advised, because I know you don't want to see this slip any further.
I mean, I think that makes sense too, you know, just to have a date certain for you to come back, and maybe you could, you know, threaten them with Chairman Romano's ire. So do you think you could get that together by October 17th?
I need to be back on that date also, so that's convenient. Thank you.
That sounds great.
At a minimum, I will provide you with an update of where we are in the process.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, and hopefully a little more, you know, to the extent that any restoration needs to happen. It seems like the comment, although anonymous, was pretty specific about rocks being piled up on the edges of the beach, right? So that's not the kind of thing that, you know, we just sort of leave alone, right? I mean, if we all went around using excavators on our, you know, on coastal shores, well, the Cohasset would be a vastly different place. So yeah, so yes, of course, an update would be appreciated, but to the extent that we can get specific, particularly about restoration, the sooner the better. I think everybody on the commission would probably appreciate that, and the neighbors would too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So October 17th. Thank you, Attorney Brodsky. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Right.
Night.
So Charlotte, do we want to let Alex go, or is he still for anything else that we have going on tonight?
That's up to you guys. We have two
No, we have a
more,
couple.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, 3 more enforcement hearings on the list. So I guess Alex, based on your schedule, but also commissioner preference.
I just don't know, Alex. Are you prepared, or Attorney Weisheit, to you know, to weigh in on the other enforcement orders? I know, or is this all you came here for tonight? And it's up to you.
The one we just discussed was the main one I was prepared for. Charlotte, do you have concerns about any of the other ones?
So the other issue that, yeah, go ahead, Charlotte, if you prefer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends. I mean, based on, I mean, with 34 Flintlock, I can give a brief update on that one. So it's really dependent on the last 2 of what the commission would like to do with those. So
Yeah, I guess the issue
I can always
is, you know,
follow
we
up
have
with
2
Alex
neighbors.
too. I mean, you know, so it's up to you guys, I think, but I'm comfortable either way.
Why don't you stick around? We're going to move through them quickly, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Alex.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
'Cause I think yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
for
sure. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I continue with 34 Flintlock?
Oh yeah. Yes, so we're at 34 Flintlock, which is
Yeah.
continued from September 5th. It's, you know, the wetlands alteration. This is the one that I think we're probably just going to wind up continuing to continue.
Yeah, so I have a quick update that the homeowner has reached out to Brad Holmes and to Morse Engineering. She had initially reached out to Brad, and the tricky part about this situation, obviously with fill that was brought into a wetland without permission, obviously the terrain there it was unstable in the spring. We couldn't get all the fill out, but in order to really assess what type of restoration is needed, Brad Holmes did mention that we kind of do need a survey of existing conditions and elevations and vegetation and everything that's out there. So she has selected a surveyor. You know, she's going to work with Morse Engineering. Once they can mobilize, I'm going to go out to that site with Brad and probably with Jeff Hassett at first, and maybe then the surveyor afterwards, depending on their schedules. So we are working on it. We do want to get out there while the site conditions are dry. So whenever we can mobilize, I'll definitely be touching base with Morrison with ECR on that. So we are actively working on it. And, you know, for now, as long as you guys are okay with that, that's what I would recommend. I mean, as long as we're getting active communication here with wanting to restore this area, I think it's good to just keep it on the agenda and just kind of keep providing updates. We haven't yet modified the active enforcement order for any additional requirements other than the restoration plan. So maybe once we get a restoration plan and or a survey of the area, we can modify what we're looking for based on what's out there. And it's been since last May since I visited the site, so I'm sure it looks different now. So, but I can put it on 10/3 or 10/17, whatever you guys would like me to do. If you want me to just put it on every 2 weeks or once a month, or, you know.
Unless the commission has, you know, a preference, I would think 10/17 is probably good enough. You know, we don't have to talk about it every 2
Okay.
weeks.
Yeah, that'll give me a little bit more time to get out there. Maybe for them to even give us something too.
Great. Anybody else have a thought? Otherwise, speak up or hold your peace till 10/17. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
And then so next we have a show cause hearing for 45 Little Harbor. And Alex, this might be you know, this might be an opportunity for you to help us. The next two have sort of similar issues. So Charlotte, do you want to give a little background?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just waiting for the let me see if he's in the audience. Let me just see if he's awake. Hi, Mr. Lanudo, if you can hear us, we're ready for there. Oh, no, he's going to decline. Okay. So I'll, you know, this is kind of a follow-up to the initial show cause we had for 44 Little Harbor with the vegetation and tree removal that was done in the late fall of last year. After many months of show cause hearings for 44, we did go out to the site a few times during that time frame. It was determined that, unfortunately, two of the trees that appear to have been removed by the landscaper were removed on the 45 Little Harbor property. Oh, sorry, I think he is raising his hand now. Hold on, sorry, 1 sec. If I can't promote him, I'll just allow speaking. Just do that instead. Hi, Mr. Lanudo, can you hear us? Yeah, you're muted. Hi, Mr. Lanudo, can you hear us? You're unmuted, but we can't hear sound. Mr. Chair, you want to give him like a minute or so?
Yeah, and I sort of heard something for a brief moment I thought, but maybe not. Yeah, let's give him a minute, see if he could sort it out, and then we could, you know, resolve this. I think I have an idea of where this is going to go anyway, so let's not give it too long. We can get Alex's KP Law's opinion before we ultimately resolve it. But
hi, Mr. Lanudo. We see your hand raised and you're unmuted, so I'm not sure if you have sound on your end. I don't know if you need to call on your phone too. Sometimes with iPads or certain laptops, I don't know, sometimes sound might be
yeah, would you like to call in instead? If
you can also use the Q&A feature as well. I know that wouldn't be as good as talking, but yeah. But yeah, just to, you know, that was really the quick summary is, you know, we the Whalens and I, the owners of 44 Little Harbor, and Sean Papich and I, we had walked the property lines. They pointed out where some of the markers were between the two properties. It did look like 2 trees were removed on the 45 side. I I did speak to Mr. Lunito, who's on the phone before this, who you know, he said he wasn't aware of this activity happening on his property. It was kind of news to him, I think, the first time he got the letter for the show cause. There we go. Not sure how to enable sound. I was in Florida home, in my Florida home. Okay. So there's a call-in option on the agenda. I'm not sure if you would like to call in on your phone to get sound, Mr. Lunuto. That's one option. Because you're unmuted now, at least as far as Zoom goes, so you should be able to speak, but I don't know if maybe your sound isn't connected properly. He said okay, so maybe just give him like a minute to dial in. But I can pull up a photo while we wait. This was back in, I think this was back in February. So we had walked this line, and some of the vegetation was actually on the 45 side. So the stuff that's closer to this ledge and the left side of the photo, that's 44 Little Harbor's property. And it was really along this line here, kind of close to the water's edge, where we did count at least, you know, I think it was 2 stumps that were determined that they were not on the Whalen's property. So yeah.
Yeah, so so who cut them down, and we still have Alex, right?
Yes.
So, question, Alex, I mean, in a situation like this where one property owner is hiring an arborist that cuts down trees on their and adjacent, you know, over their property line onto the neighbor's property, it's still the person who, is it still the person who hired the arborist responsibility to replace trees on the neighbors? Like, what's the deal there?
Yeah, so as you probably know, the enforcement order always has to be issued to the owner of the property where the violation occurred, even if they had no knowledge of it, as is the case here. It still has to always go to the record owner, and then it goes to the individual or entity who is believed to have actually committed the violation. And so here, that would be the landscaping company that actually cut, or arborist who cut down the tree. And then I suppose the owners of the neighboring property probably bear some responsibility as well. But I think it would be up to the private parties to kind of figure out amongst themselves who's going to pay for whatever mitigation or restoration is needed. But I think it should be a combination of the arborist and neighbor who hired them paying for it, rather than the innocent owner who had no knowledge of it.
And Alex, what authority do we have to sort of effectuate that?
Well, you don't have much in terms of, I mean, you could hold any of the parties responsible, but I think it's best in this situation to, leave it up to the private parties to negotiate amongst themselves. If they don't reach agreement by a certain time frame, then there are certain ways you can, escalate the pressure. But I would hope this is something that can be worked out between the private parties.
So we would so somebody would maybe make a motion to say by X and Y date, X number of trees, a mitigation plan with X number of trees presented is submitted to the commission for approval. And then just leave it to them to sort of argue about who's going to deal with it. And then if we don't hear about it, then we'd revisit it, something like that.
I think that would be a reasonable next step, yes.
Okay, let's see if we can, if the owner who's struggling to get on can come in and we can hear you know, what their thoughts are. And then if not, you know, if they can't get on, Charlotte, and depending on if this isn't appropriate, I would just continue this for 2 weeks and hopefully everybody can
Okay.
get on to talk about it.
Yeah,
We don't want to
highlighting-
sit here for any much longer. I think Alex will sort of let us know what the way to proceed.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm highlighting I usually try the
I
toll-free
gave it to
number.
him immediately.
There's a million numbers for this Zoom, but I usually always recommend trying one of the first US numbers of the toll-free number and then entering the webinar ID and passcode. So Mr. Lanuto, we'll give you another few minutes, but if that doesn't work for you, you know, we can continue this in 2 weeks. It's recommended to kind of just speak to the Whalens and figure out a plan forward. You know, we'd love to obviously hear from you. Hopefully, if you can get sound tonight, that'd be great. But if not, we can always put this, you know, on our agenda in 2 weeks. But you want to give him like another minute or so, Mr. Chair, to see if he can call in? If not, we can just pick it up in 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe just a minute. I mean, I think we're probably
Yeah.
getting 10 since we started dealing with it. So maybe just
Yeah.
one minute, we could move on to the other show
Actually,
cause.
let me see if this is the number. Hold on. I'm keeping my I saw a number join. So hi, Ms. Lanuto, is that you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, a
great.
little bit. Might need to turn the volume up on your phone.
I can hear you.
It's up to max.
Okay.
That's great.
I'm getting an echo from my screen. I can
Yeah,
see
stop
all
your
of you. I'm not sure why you can't see me and why you can't hear me. So I heard what was said.
We can hear you actually. So please go on. We can hear you.
Yeah, so I think Charlotte explained the situation. I go to Florida each year in the fall. And I was in Florida when whatever happened, and didn't know about it until much later. And then when I did get the letter, I called actually and spoke to Charlotte about it.
So did you hear our discussion? Did you hear our discussion with our town council?
I did hear. So I think what you're saying is that I need to work with my neighbor. How do I know what I need to do?
Yeah, our hands are, well, that's what we're going to come up with. We're going to, you know, Charlotte, do we have a number of trees that we would ask to be, you know, put back in mitigation? Or how many maybe were taken down?
I believe it was 2 on the ground. There may have been a third one that was cut right along the water's edge, and it was difficult to locate based on property lines. But I think it was at least 2. One of them looked like it was a cedar. The other one, I don't think we were able to identify it based on the stump. It could have been a hardy shrub or it could have been a small tree. But yeah, there was definitely like a third tree that was somewhere on the water's edge, and we just couldn't, you know, we thought it was outside of the property line, but it was a little hard to tell based on how close it was to the water. So I think the safe answer would be 2, potentially 3.
Well, so at 2 to 1, so I'm just quickly to keep moving this one along, I'm going to just ask the other commissioners quickly. What my suggestion would be that we ask for 4 trees to be planted, and we give them, you know, 30 days or till the October 17th meeting to see if the neighbors can come together and, you know, decide who's going to pay for what and who's going to do it. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I heard discuss 2 trees down, possibly a third at the water's edge. You're speaking about 4. How did that go?
So it's sort of the policy of the commission to do restoration at the level of 2 to 1 in these kinds of instances. But, you know, that's what I was just about to sort of, you know, quickly run through the other commissioners and get their thoughts on it. And then just get back to you with an answer in the next, you know, 90 seconds here, 1 minute, a couple minutes, if that's all right.
Sure. I would also add that there was a cedar tree out there that was pretty dead, falling down. Not that I had anything to do with it. nature.
Yeah, and we don't want to belabor, you know, the way that you know, these tree removals take place and what happens with dead trees and leaving them or not. Let's just see if we can move this along, and then you can communicate with, or whoever decides to take responsibility can communicate with Charlotte over the next couple of weeks as to, you know, what options there are. Commissioner Bell, do you have anything further? Does 4 trees, or is there a number that sounds good to you based on all of this?
Well, it's not clear to me how many trees were cut.
Either
Charlotte?
2 or 3. Yeah.
Charlotte?
I would confidently say 2, and the third one was definitely, I don't want to, like, you know, I'm not a professional land surveyor, but I think I can confidently say it was 2.
Okay, so yeah, 4 trees. Replacement, 2 to 1 would be 4 trees.
Commissioner Berrigan,
I'm in agreement with that.
Commissioner Magnell, Commissioner McIntyre.
Yes.
Alex, so I'm probably going to make a motion here in a minute to recommend that, you know, the parties between them, you know, come back to us or on, you know, on October 17th and work with Charlotte in the meantime to come up with mitigation planting proposal of 4 trees. Does that work for you?
That's fine by me. I think that's within the commission's discretion.
Okay, great. So so quickly to the landowner, did you, so you've heard the commission sort of, you know, what the reality is, you know, 2 to 1 in these kinds of circumstances. We're not blaming you. We understand that your position is always in Florida. I don't know what happened, you know, given the fact that we're not really, you know, referees and we're not courts and we're not anything. We're just trying to protect, you know, Cohasset and follow state and local law. We're just asking for 4 trees to be figured out. Do you think you could knock on your neighbor's door, send them a letter or whatever and say, hey, you know, this is what the commission wants. These trees were cut down. How do you want to handle this? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
The neighbor just moved in. It's a tough discussion. But besides that, isn't there any leeway on where does the 4 come from? I mean, is that a rule? Is that a law?
Yes.
Or is that just a rule that you've made up with amongst the committee?
Standard, it's standard for the location, for anything within the resource area or within the 50-foot buffer zone, which these trees were, the mitigation effort would be a 2 to 1.
So when you say standard, you don't mean it's in the bylaws or it's a law,
Sorry.
not a regulation.
Well, we have town council here. Alex, what's the best way to answer that question?
It's a protocol.
I don't know off the top of my head if that is part of the regulations, Mr. Chairman. I have to dig into
I
those.
think it falls under our enforcement abilities, Alex. Sorry to interrupt. I think it really just falls under, like, I don't think the specific number for that is in our regs, but in these enforcement cases, we have tried to be pretty consistent with, you know, given the location of where trees are cut down and how many are replaced. Some towns have, you know, direct equations for that, but for us, we've definitely just been trying to keep, you know, relatively consistent amongst these violations across town. And so this is usually the replacement requirement that has been set forth in previous enforcement orders. So under our general enforcement powers under the Wetlands Protection Act and the bylaw, we do have the ability to call upon and require restoration. So our commission, I would say within the last few years, we've issued a lot of show cause hearings and enforcement orders where we've typically required 1-to-1 replacement for trees in the 100-foot buffer, 2 to 1 in the 50, and sometimes even more than that, depending on the situation with how large the trees are, how many were removed. But that's typically the MO that we usually go by, at least from what I've seen recently. And that's usually what we're trying to stick to just kind of be consistent and fair to, you know, people across town.
Well, and of course, be fair to me too. But
I'm sorry, what, you know, and I'm sorry, I don't have this, and I'm sure I should. I just missed it, and I'm looking at the agenda and don't see. What's your name, sir? Just so I don't keep calling you.
Sure.
You know,
It's Salvatore Lanuto.
Tulanuda.
Salvatore
Oh, Salvatore
Lanuto.
Lanuto. So I mean, the idea, logically speaking, is there needs to be some increase in the number of trees. Otherwise, people will just cut down trees knowing that they just have to replace that one tree. There's got to be. It's not really a penalty. It's really helping, Cohasset in the environment, which is, what we've sort of been, we volunteer to do. Our time significant. So that would be our request, and that would be the motion I'm going to make now. And do we have a list of trees that are native species and approved? And, Charlotte can provide that to you. And, we're happy to answer any other questions. We're going to add you back to the agenda on October 17th and continue the show cause hearing until then. So I'm going to make the motion that, 4 trees in mitigation be planted, that between the neighbors at 44 and 45, Little Harbor decide amongst themselves who's going to take responsibility and who's going to report back to us with a mitigation planting plan on October 17th, and work with Charlotte to get a list of approved trees. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second that.
Would any commissioners like to further discuss this? Okay, I'm going to do a roll call on this because it seems like there's a little bit of controversy. Commissioner Bell?
Tom Bell, aye.
Commissioner Berrigan?
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner Magnello, are you available?
I am. I'm sorry, I was muted before.
Oh, that's okay.
Commissioner Magnello, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre?
Chris McIntyre, aye.
And Valerio Romano, aye. So, Salvatore, I, really appreciate your time, and I don't think anybody was trying to, the point of this is not to say that anybody's at fault necessarily. It's just really to fix what happened, and what happened, it happens to be on your property. So hopefully, you can work with your neighbor on getting it resolved. And we appreciate your time tonight. Do you have anything else?
No.
Great. Thank you so much. So let's, unless there's some opposition or some reason not to, Charlotte, shall we move on to the other show cause that, Alex might have some put on? And yep, this other show cause is for a stream alteration at 630 and 640 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. I remember when this first came before us, it seemed fairly evident from the photographs that some sort of large, really boulders, sort of, or very, very large rocks had been moved in this around the stream. You can tell from the pictures. I think it's sort of unclear, at least to the commission, and I don't really know if it's our job to sort of police these things and be investigators as to who did what when. But now the concern is that there may be some flooding, whether it's a result of that stream alteration or not, is also kind of unknown. Really has been a wet couple of years, and everybody, particularly in Cohasset, where the town is basically made up of ledge, is running into flooding issues. But that's sort of where we're at. Is that sort of a good summary, Charlotte? How do you think we, want to proceed? And we have Alex on, fortunately.
Yeah, and this one's definitely really tricky because unlike the other hearings you've heard tonight, this one was definitely both neighbors are, they are also one house apart, by the way. So 630 is in between 634 and then 640. So both parties are saying that they altered the stream. Unfortunately, I do not have a clear indication, photos, videos, timing at all, because now I'm getting 2 different timeframes, 2 different stories. This is very difficult to piece together. It's definitely evident that some large boulders were moved on top of the stream bank, and that much is evident. Unfortunately, the really unclear part is whether or not that alteration also impacted the flooding that happened on 630. It was definitely in the springtime when we had very wet conditions. And so the neighbors, of course, are saying it was the other party. This one's really difficult to kind of move forward with. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of restoration we would want to see because those boulders are really large, and moving them would definitely require either a notice of intent or an enforcement order to allow that to happen. The rocks are pretty much solid where they are. So I don't know, unlike a tree removal where you can replace a tree, stream alteration is definitely a little bit more difficult. You'd have to obviously do studies. We would have had to know the existing conditions of the stream. It's really hard to look at it in near map. So I'm definitely at least for me, from an enforcement side, I'm in a tough spot here with obviously putting the responsibility either on both of them or either of them, but also what kind of restoration would we really want to see and what information would we want to gather. So we had previously requested a site visit at the 640 property. I don't really know how to explain this, but long story short, I don't think that owner understood the purpose of the visit, because she's like, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. It was my neighbor, like, blame them. I was like, I mean, you know, so I mean, they are split by one house in between, and you know, it really happened on 630 and possibly even 634, but it's a difficult spot to be in when you get these calls and each party is saying they both did it without really giving me anything else but just their word. So yeah, like I said, the stream, what do we do with the stream alteration? You know, the beach was different, trees are different, wetlands filling is obviously different. You know what to do and how to fix that, but stream alteration requires a lot more, you know, and like you said, like Valerio, I don't know how much we should really, you know, the investigation part is really difficult. So at least in this situation.
My opinion is that without knowing who, if anyone altered the stream in terms of moving boulders or what that effect was on the flooding situation, I think without the input of a hydrologist or wetland scientist, we can't. I don't think we have anything to go on. It's just two neighbors, unfortunately, pointing fingers. So there's no evidence of anything other than, you know, hearsay. In my opinion, we don't know what the existing conditions were before, or what the prior, you know, if there even was alteration. We don't know it. We don't have enough information to do anything. So if they want to, I think if they want to change their situation in terms of flooding, they need to come to us with a solution. I think that's all we can do.
Yeah, so with that, with that, I mean, my suggestion would be, and I'm going to run through the commissioners, would be just sort of to issue a warning to each party, you know, with the explanation that any sort of, you know, alteration of the stream or disturbance like that requires, at the very minimum, you know, a request from us, depending on, you know, how they want to proceed, whether it's NOI or what. And then issue that warning and close this one out. But I'd like to hear from the rest of the commissioners, particularly, you know, Commissioner Bell, and Commissioner Berrigan, I think certainly more experience, whether they have a different proposal as well. But that's what seems to make sense to me, given the fact that we're not, you know, the world's police here, and we just have limited power. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I think that I agree with everything that pretty much been said. We really don't have enough evidence to determine whether anybody's done anything wrong here, and whether, if anything was done, whether it had any impact on flooding there. As you said, we had a wet spring. There's a small culvert at one end of these properties, and maybe it's undersized. So I would just say that everybody ought to document what they've got right now, the existing conditions now. Go out there and take pictures of everything, and if it changes, then they have some evidence to bring to us. If it changes in the future, but I don't see what we can do about it now.
Yeah, and I don't have photos on the 640 property, but I do now have clear photos of what the stream looks like from March of this year. So, I mean, if there are any additional reports, now I can compare the photos. So that's definitely better, because near map was unclear.
Yeah.
And maybe you could put that in the sort of the warning letter to Charlotte.
Yeah.
You know, should any conflict between the neighbors on similar issue arise in the future, you know, behoove you to really document, with photographic evidence what the current status is, you know, and then they would have that as well. Because like I said, like we all understand, it's really not our job to police the neighbors. Good.
Yeah, and
Commissioner
also,
Bell, anything else? Commissioner Berrigan, do you have any thoughts on this?
Nope, just that I agree with everything that everybody just said. We really don't have enough evidence to point fingers, so.
Steve?
I can't see, I mean, it seems like it was on one person's property that the alterations were made, so. How close are these two properties, and is it
They're
possible?
actually, they're further away than you would think. So there's a house in between the two parties. So there's 630 where the stream alteration evident, it supposedly happened, and then
Oh, do
there's-
us a favor and we pull up some
Yeah.
sort of either mass mapper or near map just to illustrate
Yeah.
the conditions for people that aren't familiar with it.
yeah.
I guess part of it is do we even know that this boulder is removed?
I remember when this first came before us, you
There's
could
no
clearly
before.
see.
There's no before photos, there's only
There was
after.
some way, I remember, to see the fact that a boulder had been moved in the stream. It was clear. I can look.
Yeah, there was like an imprint, so it looked like that at least one or two of the rocks were definitely put up on the bank. So, oh, sorry, this is where it gets a little tough. I can try to get to a photo, obviously, where there's less vegetation, but 630's here and 640 is here. So 634 is in the middle, and this party and this party are both saying that they altered the stream. This party is saying that this person hired people to come over to her property and clear out this stream. And then this party is saying that this person had somebody go in and do it. So it's kind of hard to see, but this is kind of where the stream is. And the bank up here has boulders. You can't really see it with the near map imagery, but they are stacked behind this, looks like a shed or a garage. And so you could see that some of the rocks had been moved from their location in the stream to this bank area potentially. I mean, it's even hard to tell if those were the rocks that were a part of the stream, obviously, but it definitely did look like that rocks and boulders were removed in this tight area that kind of bottlenecked before it comes back out here and goes under a culvert or through a culvert here. And then the stream kind of goes back here and it keeps going. So I haven't seen this side of, where everything goes. And at some point it crosses over to this person's property. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. So I've really only seen the site conditions here and not from here to here. So that's another thing that I wasn't able to look at, despite me saying, we need to come out and look at it. And yeah, so.
Which direction is downstream?
This way.
I see.
So it flows through the woods here. It looks like I can kind of see it here. It flows through the woods here and then into a culvert here.
Charles, and just for if you just scroll down north, plan north to that house, yeah, that property, just scroll up to center. And then if you keep going a little bit, you can scroll in on the where your cursor is. So
Zoom in.
Just go
Sorry.
in, just zoom in on where your cursor is right now.
Yeah.
And center it a little bit. Center it. Bring it up.
Oh, like that?
No, directly
down?
north. Just bring it directly straight. Yeah. So that house right there.
Yep.
So now go back in time to 1 or 2 months or to 2022.
2022. Okay.
Yeah, so this house right here, so the retaining wall that you saw in 2023 is not present. Then you go forward, probably when this retaining wall is now present here, and probably it could have something to do with it too. I don't know, but my point is we have no idea what the hell's going on, and it's not just. I don't think it's just flooding from the stream. I think they're just getting the photos that we got from the neighbors. It was just water in the yard. It's not. No, we just don't have enough evidence. So it's like we need someone to weigh in on the conditions there. What's happening? Someone with like a geologist, hydrologist, someone that can explain what's causing the flooding.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's there, as you guys know, I sound like a broken record. I was explaining the weather a lot to people this past year because it's gotten so wet and people have been calling and blaming it on construction, on their neighbors, et cetera. And maybe to a certain point that definitely was the case, but overall, you know, the water table was so high and you know, people's properties were flooding and you know, it's definitely scary. And so I think people are, you know, some people, maybe this was the case where people were trying to think of someone did something and it caused this, rather than this is now the pattern of seeing these wetter springs and winters and seeing the water rise much higher than they've seen it in the past. So, I mean, you can't go by the past anymore of, you know, I've lived here 40 years, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you can't really reference that as much anymore with the weather patterns that have been changing. So you guys all know this, obviously, you guys are, yeah. But anyway, so is everyone okay with closing the show cause tonight and issuing a warning letter and just emphasizing, obviously, any alterations to the stream or within 100 feet of that stream, by the way, it's intermittent. So it's 100 feet, not 200 for riverfront, would require a permit. So.
Before we make that decision, Alex, just because we kept you on for this, is there anything, you know, that you think we should be considering that we haven't?
No, I think your reasoning makes perfect sense to me, and seems like a good solution to.
Okay, great. I mean, I think we can probably let KP go then, unless somebody else has another thought. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. We appreciate your time, and we'll keep you posted on the other stuff tonight.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
So yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to close it. If anybody was interested, that you can. There are pictures from the 2 different site visits from March versus November of the year before. I think it is. You can see that there definitely boulders had been moved on the stream. You could get perspective via the little wood bridge. And you can look at the boulders, and it's definitely they're just organized differently. They were moved. But that being said, I think we've made a decision as to what we're going to do. So I'm not trying to keep us, you know, everybody flipping through those pictures, you know, unnecessarily. But it is clear that it doesn't mean that moving those boulders is causing the flooding by any means. But somebody moved some boulders at the stream. I mean, that's pretty much there, you know. But that doesn't mean we know that that's why. That doesn't necessarily get us to the conclusion that somebody's at fault either. It does mean that they needed a permit to move the boulders, but so why don't we do that? Why don't we issue the order, close this and issue an order? Is that something that we need to vote on, or
yeah, you can just vote to close the show cause with a, you know, roll call and
and then issue, not an order, a warning, sorry. Yeah.
and issue warnings, yeah, to both property owners, yeah.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Commissioner Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner Magnell,
Commissioner Steve Magnell, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Valerio Romano, aye. All right, great. So now that that's done, so now we got something fun. Good news, hopefully. A certificate of COC for stormwater permit 1707 at 80 Howell Road.
Yeah. Let me just bring on homeowner Brett. I'm also pulling up my documents, so give me a hot second. Hi, Brett, can you hear us?
We can.
Okay, great. Do you want Jeff and Sean, or do you want to just you guys for now, or?
Whatever you think is best. If they're available and you think we need them.
Yeah, they're available. I can promote them, and you know.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this was, I think this was before all of our times, but this was a stormwater permit from, well, originally 2016, revised and finalized in 2017. So I am going to pull up the plans, but just bear with me because it is a scan. So, and maybe Jeff has a better copy, but this was a construction of a single family home. It was just a stormwater permit. This is on a pretty much a hill on Howe Road. So it sits pretty high up and the driveway goes down to meets the existing grade in the road. So this is the approved plan. I know it's a little blurry to read. It was, you know, home, garage, had two subsurface infiltration chambers that would connect all the roof drain, connections to these systems underground. And then there would also be a proposed rain garden stormwater depression at elevation 93 bottom, 94 top. And then there was a proposed pervious driveway. I don't think the original material was called out on the plan, so it is gravel pavers. It is not porous asphalt, and we are in the process of getting the updated long-term maintenance plan signed and recorded, so that will be done administratively before a COC is issued. So yeah, just to give you a reference, this was the approved plan. Oh, and then there's also a crushed stone trench that was on the right side of the driveway here, where the rain garden would kind of, this and the rain garden would collect the runoff coming down the hill in the driveway, and then connect, this trench was going to connect to a trench drain, which is this thick black line kind of right here. And then proposed landscaping on this side. There was a separate landscaping plan from 2017, which I can pull up for reference, but I will just note that the 2017 landscaping plan obviously does not include, it was never updated to include the current house plan, which was approved September 28th, 2020. So that's unfortunately something that I've seen happen actually with a lot of these properties in this area, where the plans were revised multiple times, but the landscaping plan, didn't really follow up on that. So I just want to be mindful of that for the COC discussion. So in terms of the site, and I can pull up photos too, I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at them. I'm sorry, I was putting them in last minute. The site is stabilized. There is permanent vegetative cover that's, comprised of lawn and landscaping, the rain garden, etc. So I didn't see any evident signs of erosion, although I will note we obviously are in the dry season. But the owners also said that they haven't, Brett and Jen said that they haven't observed any erosion leaving the site since the site has been stabilized. The chambers underground have been installed per plan and connected per plan. The stone trench is there. The rain garden is there. It has plantings atop mulch mostly. The one thing is a little unclear to see if the seed mix was installed in here, but other than that, there's definitely rain garden plantings that were installed in this area. There were 6 red maple trees that were installed along this area where they're calling out on the plans, and a few other smaller ornamental type shrub trees here, and a bunch of shrubs here, and then plantings around the house. So yeah, in terms of the main stormwater requirements under our bylaw, the 3 requirements have been met in terms of the stormwater systems installed and functioning and certified by the engineer on an as-built plan, and then final grading and final site landscaping. So I know we're kind of at the end here. It did take a while for the project to finally come around. I'm sure the homeowners are pleased with this. There were just, having said that, there were just a few deviations that I can go over on the as-built, and then I'll just turn it over to the commission and anybody else for questions. So this is the as-built. So just a couple things that I will note, and I can pull both plans up for comparison. Just a note on the as-built, the ledge outcrops versus the ledge outcrops surveyed on the plan are different. But from what we've seen, is it seems to indicate that the landscaping, was obviously a relation to that. So some of the ledge may have gotten, buried with the loam and seed rather than being removed. So just kind of noting that the ledge outcrops you see on the plans here don't show the same outlines than the plan from 2020. We had to re-add the existing trees that remained from this tree line here. So these trees all in the back of the property in this corner, these are trees that were proposed to remain, that were located on the site. This tree was remaining. And then these are the trees right here. These are the red maples, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then one down here, 6 red maples that were added. You see the roof drain connections and then landscaping here. And then, so in terms of the deviations, there was a pervious patio that was installed back here in the backyard. It is pervious. You can see the separation and the looks like a fine gravel in between the pavers. There is a small retaining wall built here in a pervious walkway with stairs coming out from the porch. that Jeff mentioned kind of helps with, stabilizing and controlling this area with runoff a little bit more. Walkway just a little bit different here, but overall in the same general pattern as the proposed plan. The grading here is pretty much similar, catch basin at an elevation and the rain garden at the 93, 94 elevation. And then in terms of landscaping, the plantings are definitely different from the 2017 plan. The original 2017 plan had, different variety of native trees. It had black tupelo, red oak, dogwoods, a few others, and some pines. And then obviously that's different than what's here. And then it was the same with like the shrubs and perennials. So I know we're just dealing with a stormwater permit here, but just wanted to kind of note that. But I have seen that with the other properties around town. So with that, I can turn it over to the commission or to the applicant and the engineer for anything else to add. Yeah.
Yeah, so does the applicant have anything else that we should be thinking about?
Jeff Hassett here with Morse. No, that was a great summary. Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, this project was permitted back in 2016 under a stormwater permit. We filed modifications in 2017, 2019, and 2020. We did an as-built in June, and it looked to be generally built in compliance with the design plan. I saw it's a pervious driveway up top near the garage. The impervious portion of the driveway drains to a drain going across, capturing all the runoff coming down, tying into a small leaching pit with an overflow to a stone trench. The rain garden was built properly. The dry wells were built properly, and Morse Engineering inspected those before they were covered up. All the downspouts are going into the ground and connecting to them. So yeah, this project took a while to get to this point, but it's fully stabilized, and I'm satisfied.
Great. Commissioner Bell?
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Berrigan?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Magnell?
I've got no additional questions. I have to say that it does look very, very nice now as we come up the street. Being an almost neighbor.
Oh, great. Commissioner McIntyre?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, same, particularly after Steve's input there. Sincerely, I'm good too. Charlotte, anything else we should be thinking about?
Just that I will work with Brett and Jen to record the long-term operation maintenance plan. It was just updated today. I can't even remember. So it just had to remove any porous pavement maintenance and replace it with crushed stone maintenance and the rain garden maintenance. So we modified the O&M plan from 2017 or previous years. And so that will be recorded with the registry prior to the issuance of a COC, but I can do that administratively if you guys are okay with that. But it will be recorded prior to the issuance of the COC because that's what we need for our regulations.
So the updated maintenance plan you'll get and confirm that it reflects the final as-built, and then that will be recorded?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Jeff had just updated it and I just signed it, and then the owners will sign and record that with the registry. And then when they give me recording proof, I can issue the COC. If you guys are okay with that administrative process. I mean, I've done it before. It's not a huge burden for me at all. It's really just, once I get it, I'll print out the COC. It takes 2 seconds, so.
Oh, great. Does anybody want to make a motion regarding the COC?
I'll do that.
Yep, go ahead. Sorry. Go, please, Chris.
I do move for the COC.
Oh. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Steve. You sounded like Chris for a second, please.
Excuse me?
Oh, were you making a motion? I think I interrupted you. I didn't mean to.
I am.
So you move to make the motion to issue a certificate of compliance and completion for the project at 80 Howe.
80 Howe, yes.
For stormwater permit 17.
Oh, yes. That's right. Sorry.
If they force stormwater permit 1707. It's been a while.
I'll second that. Great. Commissioner Bell, roll call
Bell,
vote.
aye.
Commissioner Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner Magnell,
Stephen Magnell, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Blair Romano, aye. All right, that's great. Just please work with Charlotte on making sure we have, the final plan to be registered.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Congrats, guys.
Welcome. And then, just the reminder that the second one for 49 Border
Was continued.
Yeah, yeah. So they're gonna finish some plantings and come back to us.
So that ends the various hearings that were noticed. And let me hold on, let me just pull up the agenda.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Valeria, just a quick reminder, you gotta read the, when, you like that vote passes and then just say the vote.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that vote passes unanimously.
Yep. All right. You guys want to go through my updates real quick, or do you guys want to do 48-hour things? I know it's 10 o'clock, so I'll be brief.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should just finish off the agenda. Yeah, let's hear what's going on.
Okay, one quick 48-hour update, and I'm using it as 40 hours because I forgot to put it on my agenda, but we did go out for Turkey Hill. This is our first invasive species removal project. Unfortunately, I was not able to participate as much as I wanted to, but I did walk the perimeter of the IVW. We GPSed all of the flags and stakes that were out there. And then they ran a couple transects, belt transects, with a tape across the entire IVW and the buffer zones. They did meter square quadrats every 10 meters plus or minus. And then they gave me the early vegetative data in terms of the native, non-native, and invasive species that were out there. They haven't compiled everything yet, but just wanted to let you guys know that we did go out there. And most of what I could see based on my identification skills, it's the Phragmites is definitely spread since last year. So when I was first there, there were pockets that were very defined, and now it's more spread out in the IVW, but obviously you don't see any of that in the buffer zone. You definitely see a lot of, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the scientific name, geez. The rose, the one that's invasive. Crap, what is it?
Multiflora.
That one, yeah, multiflora rose, thank you. I was gonna say Rosa rugosa, I know that's wrong, but that's still technically a not species you don't want to plant. So yeah, the multiflora rose is definitely out there. Phragmites and multiflora rose, I would say, were definitely the more dominant invasive species that were out there. There's definitely a lot of goldenrod in the buffer zone, so that actually looks really great in terms of wildlife habitat. Didn't find any bittersweet, didn't find any knotweed or knapweed. Didn't find black swallowwort, although I will note that I did notice it last year, potentially in the buffer zones. One thing that we couldn't see in our early data was purple loosestrife, but purple loosestrife had probably already gone to seed, so it may have just gotten, either wasn't in those specific transects and quadrats, or it just didn't, appear as evident in the field because, it's not as purple and bright anymore. But yeah, the early data will get, it's just being finalized now, so I'll send you guys that report. They do want to start, obviously, the treatment with the Phragmites now in the fall. And they, I think, are going to try to tackle the multiflora rose. But the good thing is it seems like we're dealing with, really a couple main species rather than a variety of different species. So the methodology should be pretty consistent. And then in the buffer zone, I really just noticed multiflora rose, because obviously the Phragmites was sticking in the wetlands. So yeah, I'll just wait for her final report, but that's what I noticed out there, so.
Not being around for this, where is this?
Oh, sorry, Steve. Yeah, this is Turkey Hill. It is a conservation property that's managed by the trustees, and it's split between Hingham and Cohasset. And there was a weird isolated vegetative wetland that was actually on a slope, but it was definitely hitting the criteria in terms of hydrology and vegetation and science, and hydric soils, excuse me. So yeah, I've never seen a wetland on a slope before. That was weird. But it was previously a wooded wetland that at one point was cut down by the trustees for grassland habitat, but nobody knew it was a wetland until now, and we had to have actually a few delineations out there to confirm it was an IBW. And so they wanted to manage the invasive species there. And so we worked with them to issue an order of conditions with a lot of conditions about obviously being mindful and conservative with the use of herbicides and very selective mowing. And we're going to test two different methods. One will be with herbicides and biannual mowing, and one will just be with herbicides in both the buffer and the IBW, but then only doing mowing in the buffer and leaving the wetland alone with just the herbicide treatment and no mowing. So we're going to see, we basically are going to split the IBW and the buffer zone in half and do both of those methods. And it's going to be a 3+ year project. We're going to see what's more successful. And since this was the first project where we had allowed the use of herbicides, because normally that's not allowed in our bylaw and we haven't given any variances for it. So this was basically set up as a giant experiment. And the person who's doing this is a licensed applicator. And then the woman who presented to us is a certified ecological restoration professional, CERP. So she knows what she's doing, also has a PhD. So definitely very confident in her abilities to identify the stuff that's out there before and after treatment. So
Is this up on the hill at the top?
Yep. It's like on the slope, like just before the toe of the slope at the bottom where the trails are.
Right.
But yeah, you guys are definitely welcome as the part of the order. You guys are welcome to go out there at any time. So if you guys do go out there, either for fun or just to investigate, whatever, and you guys do see anything that doesn't look right, just let me know. But I'll definitely, with, my leg getting stronger, I will be going out there quite often. So but that was my only 48-hour update for you guys.
Great, it's really encouraging.
Yeah. You want me to just go through my updates real quick? Or do you guys want me to table them?
No, go for it.
I say go for it, yeah.
The 20 Parker Ave, this was the project that we just saw 2 weeks ago. They have recorded their order. They will be recording their order tomorrow. They just put up the DEP sign. They are going to start some of the vegetation cutting a little bit because the knotweed is so dense. You do need to cut a little bit to get the erosion control in there. So I did walk the site with them today, and I, instructed them through that process. And then I'll come back out for a pre-construction visit before they start any construction work or removal of the soils and stuff. 83 Spring Street. I'm just keeping an eye on this one. I've given you guys updates on this, that he hasn't gotten a building permit yet. This is the house that's in the woods. Valerio and Chris, I will talk to you guys about some stuff, but basically what I found is, long story short, I don't think a gas line was ever talked about on the plans, and now it has now come to light that he's going to need it. And if that involves any work on the driveway, that is going to involve obviously a change to the permit, because originally there was no work that was proposed on the driveway. So I don't know what that is. I do have a revised plan from Jeff Hassett. I haven't looked at it yet, but I did go out to the site. I measured the driveway width, just because there were concerns from neighbors that he was widening the driveway. So the middle section of the driveway is definitely 12 feet, but the beginning and end are obviously wider. As just being frank with you guys, I mean, if he did inch the erosion control barrier slowly out over time, it's really hard for me to tell from my previous photos on the site. Because I was there in the winter when there was no vegetation, and now I'm obviously out there with full vegetation. So it's harder for me to gauge if he really did move it, or if the vegetation was just not there originally, obviously, and now it's grown back, or if it was never there. So but now that I've taken baseline measurements, I actually marked up a plan, like every 10 to 12 feet, I took baseline measurements of what the site looks like now. So I will be holding him to that at the end of the project. If any section of that driveway seems wider or more, altered than it was supposed to be, because nothing was supposed to happen in the driveway, nothing except protecting the trees. He will have to come back to conservation to get permission to do anything there. So there's that. And then 337 South Main, this was one of our enforcement cases. He's already planted the trees in the buffer zones that we told him to. So I already set a calendar date to check back with him in a year and go to the site and just see how the trees are how they're doing. But, he did what we asked, so that's good. So he's already finished with the work because I think he wanted it off his plate. And then 87-124 Elm, this one I'm expecting will come to you guys soon as a certificate of compliance request. Pretty much, I would say the vast majority of the landscaping is done, except for a little bit maybe on 87, but they are piecing together the as-built. And that will get submitted to me probably within the next couple of weeks. And then the last update I have for you guys is 35 Nichols Road. This is a pool permit that we had issued. We are getting taken to court by the immediate abutter, who was slightly down gradient, who had expressed some existing drainage issues from 2018 that were not related to the permit itself. And I don't know if you guys remember, but during the hearings, we had actually encouraged the applicant to speak to the neighbor and try to figure out those issues. They actually did put in a subsurface system to kind of help with that, channeling that roof runoff. But we're still I'm working with town council to prepare documents. I don't know what's going to happen. It could get dropped at any time if both parties reach a settlement, but it's just a shame that they couldn't work together and figure it out. I really thought by putting that on the plans, we could figure it out, but I guess that's not the case. So
I read the complaint last night. It seems like part of the allegation is that the previous work from the previous property owner wasn't permitted, right? So
correct.
And then they're saying
Correct.
that we messed up by issuing the permit later on for a new property owner without considering the fact that the original sports court and pool wasn't permitted, which I don't even remember being an issue for us. But that's part of the allegation in the complaint, so I don't know.
This is from 20, so the violations that they're talking about, well, supposed violations are from 2018. I've looked at the aerial imagery and you can definitely see within the last 6+ years that property has changed. But without abusing my powers on Nearmap, I'm sure that's happened across town. Whether or not our commission was made aware of it in 2018, I have no idea. That was 3 years before my time. I tried talking to my predecessor about it and he didn't really give me any additional information. That's just between us, but I tried to see if I could get any information out of him. I'm like, hey, do you remember this property? But he didn't have anything for me. So I'm just going to work with town council. I mean, we've been lectured already by other legal parties about the statute of limitations. So I don't know if that would have, I don't know if we would have had the ability to hold up somebody's permit 6 years later about an issue that was never reported to us efficiently. So that I don't know. I mean, why didn't we do anything 6 years ago? I'm not sure. I don't have the documentation to really explain that.
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring that element up because it was sort of the red herring, which I didn't really see. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. They're using this permit as an excuse, I think, to try and get reconciliation for an issue that was 6+ years old. But I mean, DEP obviously issued a superseding determination in our favor because obviously they were just tasked with the work that was shown in the buffer zone, which was nothing. So DEP obviously stands with us from a conservation perspective, but they're mostly going after the stormwater stuff with this court appeal. So yeah, I don't know. I'll keep you guys posted. There was a letter, Valerio, that was sent to me, but it was addressed to you. So I don't know if that counts. I don't think any of you guys have gotten your copy in the mail from the sheriff's office from the courts.
I haven't been served with anything.
Yeah, so town council just said they're going to move forward because the initial notice was given to us August 29th. So we have 90 days to respond. So since there was a copy that was delivered technically to you as the chair, but it was still sent to me at town hall, I mean, we're just going to move forward and maybe just make a note of that. But I think I'm going to have to work with Alex about investigating this 6-year case. I took screenshots on Nearmap. We'll figure it out. But whether or not we should have issued a permit, I think that's going to be for the courts to decide, because that will set a precedent. Like, do we now have to go like 5+ years back on every property and investigate if there were any changes, and is that the applicant's responsibility to report to us? Like, we don't have a look back policy in our bylaw. So this is new territory.
Would that be our responsibility anyway? Would it be the building inspector, who's like, so that
yeah, that's not just our responsibility. I couldn't even find a building permit for it. So
yeah, so I don't have the answer obviously for that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I also just from a general, I don't think, unless it's just one party suing another, I don't think in this case, like arguing service is going to get very far. We're on notice of the complaint at this point. I don't think it doesn't really. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, they're mostly mad that we issued a permit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys posted, but we're just gonna move forward with responding on the court's end, just to, you know, but town council usually advises in these kinds of cases to take not an aggressive approach to it, but to just present the facts and say, this is what we did and this is what happened, and just kind of, you know, go from there. But I think we did our due diligence. I mean, we asked the applicants, can you work with your neighbor to fix this? And they put it on the plans. Like, what else does the neighbor want? I don't know. We'll figure it out. So anyway, that's it. That's all I had for you guys.
Anybody else have anything? Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second. Thanks all.
All right. Thanks,
We have
guys.
to vote on it.
Yeah. we have to vote.
Valerio, we have to vote on the motion. You can't
I
leave
know,
the motion on the
I'm with it.
table.
Let's just do, I don't think we have to do a roll call.
No, we don't.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Have a great night. Have a
Charlotte.
good weekend.
Thank you, Tom. Take care, guys.
Steve,
Thanks,
have fun
Charlotte.
in Acadia for round 2.
Okay. Good night.